recognized to speak. During today's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access the service should send an email to the board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated for anyone who would like access to a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I would like to call the roll for the committee members. Director Bouquet.
Present.
Director Busick.
Je suis là.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Present.
Director Nicholson.
I am here.
Director Pagliari.
Present.
Director Whitmore.
Present.
And I am also here. We have 7 members, and I would just not to shine too much of a light on it, but this is Director Busick's final meeting with RTD. So just want to wish you well, my friend, and I'm very excited for you and your next adventures, and looking forward to come visiting you when you're settled in.
We got the Harwick suite waiting.
Love it. Love it. I hope it's a wing. Please note that tonight's agenda includes a significant number of discussion items, action items, and updates. To ensure we are able to cover everything, I will be mindful of our time and I will implement reasonable time limits throughout the meeting. Expect a lot of public comment related to Route 228 and also access on demand. Oh, this is just for me. Now I would like to open to public comment who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding agendas. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Executive Manager Kroll, do we have any hands raised?
Yes, at this time we have a number of hands raised. The first of whom is from an individual identifying as concerned citizen.
Okay. Concerned citizen, you will have 2 minutes to speak. Please unmute yourself.
I see that they are unmuted, but we're not getting any audio from them at this time. Why don't we go ahead and come back to them if that's okay, Chair, and we can move to the next person.
Okay. Sounds good.
We will move to Courtney Garrett.
All right. Ms. Garrett, please announce your name, and then you have 2 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Courtney Garrett. I'm the president and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership, and I'm here this evening to speak about the critical role public transportation plays in downtown Denver, and to thank this board and leadership for your cooperation as news of potential service modifications has been shared. We are grateful for the reassurance that no immediate changes to key downtown service will be made, like the 16th Street free ride. Now, we also understand the budget challenges that RTD is facing, like most transit agencies nationwide. So we are here as your steadfast partner as evaluations continue so that we can ensure that we maintain a robust network in the center city and that we preserve a safe, well-connected, accessible, and affordable transit system. The importance of a well-planned, well-connected network is critical to our economic and social vitality. Our downtown workforce, visitors, and residents rely on the ability to move people to and through downtown on public transit. And as we collectively emphasize the importance of increasing the tax base and revitalizing our city center, further impeding transit is detrimental to future growth and puts recent investment at risk. Specifically, the free ride is an essential piece of downtown infrastructure. It's the crosstown connector linking Union Station, Civic Center, and the regional transit network. Since 16th Street construction has been complete, boardings have nearly doubled to more than 250,000. Removing service now would undercut a recovery success story right as it's taking hold. The free ride connects riders to the retail, dining, and hospitality businesses that make up downtown's economic base. So service cuts would ripple into business impacts. Therefore, as the evaluation continues, we ask to be engaged early and often and are a committed partner to ensure we continue to serve the Metro Denver community as a whole. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Executive Manager Kroll.
Yes, next we will have Kristen Heiser.
Kristen Heiser. If you would, please state your name and then you may proceed.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. So my name is Kristen Heiser. I'm the Executive Director of the Broomfield Housing Alliance. Just weeks ago, I sent this committee and the RTD board a note of appreciation thanking you for reinstating Route 53. It represented an important investment in Broomfield and a recognition that our community deserves access to reliable public transportation. Just today, I was deeply dismayed to learn by reading your agenda that RTD is considering reversing that decision before the service has even had an opportunity to succeed. RTD's proposed reductions would eliminate Route 53, Broomfield Flex Ride, Interlochen, Westmore Flex Ride, and potentially additional routes. For Broomfield, this is not a modest budget adjustment. It is dismantling of much of our transit system. At the Broomfield Housing Alliance, we know that housing alone does not create opportunity. People also need transportation to get to work, medical appointments, grocery stores, schools, and community activities. Without mobility, affordable housing cannot fully deliver on its promise. In just a couple weeks, BHA will be opening the Grove at Cottonwood, a neuro-inclusive affordable housing community for adults with IDD. Earlier this year, RTD denied our request for a reasonable modification to extend the excessive ride service area the final 750 feet, only 750 feet, needed to reach the property. We accepted that decision because RTD restored Route 53 and proposed extending the route further north, creating the transit access that our future residents will rely on. While we believed our reasonable modification request offered a simpler and more direct solution, we accepted RTD's alternative in good faith. Now, before that solution has even been implemented, it is being considered for elimination. RTD has asked communities to partner in planning for the future, and Broomfield has done exactly that. We have planned housing, transportation, and community investments around the commitments RTD has made. Reversing course before these investments have had the opportunity to succeed undermines confidence in that partnership and makes it far more difficult for communities like ours to plan responsibly for the future. This is bigger than one housing community. These proposals would affect seniors, workers, students, veterans, people with disabilities, and thousands of Broomfield residents who pay the same 1% RTD sales tax as every other community in this district. It is difficult budget decisions if they must be made, they should be equitable, data-driven, and applied consistently across the region. Eliminating the majority of Broomfield's transit services while other communities experience far smaller impacts is neither equitable nor consistent with RTD's mission to serve the entire region. I urge you to reject these proposed service reductions, preserve Route 53 and its planned northern extension, protect Flex Ride service, and allow these recent investments the opportunity to demonstrate their value before considering elimination. Broomfield residents deserve a transportation system that they can depend on, and not one that disappears just as access is finally being restored. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, next we have Mars Cruz.
Mars Cruz, if you would, please state your name and then you may proceed. You'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, folks. My name is Mars Cruz, and I am a resident of downtown Denver. First off, I just want to say that I'm a new resident of Colorado, and I am very appreciative of the many services that RTD provides, especially their light rail, which is why I'm here today to show a lot of concern for some of the proposed changes. One of them is that the proposed cut to the R line for any reduction above 10% in services. I'm actually waiting for the R line to go home from work. That line serves myself, a lot of my colleagues at CU Anschutz, and also a lot of county and city employees for Aurora and Arapahoe County, respectively. I really implore y'all to, try to do as few cuts as possible and nothing above the 10% proposed cuts. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have we're gonna try it again. Concerned citizen.
Concerned citizen, if you would please state your name, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
I have unmuted myself. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was unmuted the first time too, but you cut me off, but that's okay. I'm here. Thank you. I didn't realize this was only a 2-minute public comment. The last meeting that I watched of yours was 3 minutes. And the reason I'm signed up as concerned citizen is because you are denying people the ability to talk at your public meetings this evening. And my name is Regan Benson. And had I signed up under Regan Benson, you would not have allowed me to talk. So that's why I'm signed up as concerned citizen. So I'm here on police issues from a police interaction on 4/20, which was exceptionally problematic on Colfax. We have a lack of process for filing formal complaints on the sergeant and Commander Quizino for producing a document to the chief of police that told him that he should ignore my complaint based on his opinion of me. And then the individual that was signed up also to talk on policy, I actually contract with her through my 501c3, Helping Hands for Dignity Coalition. We do direct street outreach with the homeless community. And she's a contracted expert research analyst in police and homelessness policy. And she was told she couldn't speak tonight. Now, I might know a thing or two about First Amendment rights, and I'm pretty sure you violated her rights to be able to redress government in a public forum. So you might want to get some advice on doing things like that, or perhaps not doing things like that. We've got a major problem in the police department with how they're responding to the homelessness issue, the use of force, a lot of other issues with this police department that seem to just get brushed under the rug when trying to address them with the chief of police. So there is that from the safety policy issues. And you have a lot of constitutional violations occurring with use of force and denying people use of the public transportation system, primarily the homeless population and those with disabilities. So that is a very serious issue that this committee should discuss. I don't even know who's on this committee. Couldn't find any information on you. Transparency is not your bag.
If you could.
Okay, next we have Sue Myers.
Okay, Sue Myers, if you'd please state your name, then you can start speaking. You'll have 2 minutes.
Yes, my name is Sue Myers. I live in the North Metro area. I live in Superior. My son is a 37-year-old young man with intellectual and developmental disabilities. He qualifies for Access-a-Ride. He uses Access on Demand, RTD fixed routes, and Access-a-Ride to get into the community, to get to his job, to get to appointments. I am very upset to hear that you are considering not maintaining Route 53 in Broomfield. This route was just reinstated recently, and the plan was to extend the route to go up North Sheridan that would go by a new community for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and allow them to have access to their Access-a-Ride as well as a fixed route. Having a fixed route and having adequate bus service for this population is very, very important. And I urge you to reconsider extending the 53 and maintaining the 53. Another route that you are looking at cutting is the 228 in Superior. This route goes from Broomfield all the way across Superior through Louisville and into Lafayette. It is a lifeline for people who live in the North Metro area. Basically, it's Superior's only bus route. My son takes this bus 3 days a week to get to his job at the ARC thrift store. If that route is cut, he will not have a way to get to work. So I encourage you to look at these routes that are neighborhood routes, that are routes for normal people trying to get to work, trying to get out in the community and really look at what routes can be saved. I realize RTD is in a tough position. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Brad Bruce.
Brad Bruce, please state your name and then you have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Brad Bruce. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much for letting me speak this evening. I am just here to talk about the proposed cuts that came out yesterday or a few days ago. I am really concerned about specifically the 16th Street free ride. I live in Cap Hill, and it's such an excellent way to get around downtown. My understanding is they're electric buses, so it's some of the most economic or eco-friendly options that people in Denver have to get around the city. And, I'm a public employee. I am certainly well aware of the issues with Tabor and how many different agencies and departments throughout the state, both at the state level, local level, are basically collapsing under financial ruin. But I think we really need to get some sort of tax increase on the ballot. I don't know if it's too late to collect signatures for that. I don't know if you guys have to go to the state legislature through that, but I really, really do not want to see the free mall ride go away. I just moved from Lakewood a few weeks ago, and just hearing the stories from all these other folks that live in Broomfield and Superior, I know what it's like to have a bus route that comes by once an hour, once every half hour, and just to see these cut would decimate some of these communities because there's a lot of people in the city that don't have cars, contrary to popular belief, and I just really encourage you guys to only implement, a bare minimum, the 5% proposed cuts, and get another additional 1% sales tax on the ballot. Like I said, I know how rough Tabor is in the state, so thank you so much, and I encourage you to cut as little as possible.
Thank you, Brad.
Next we have Ethan Elshiad.
Ethan, please state your name and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, I'm Ethan. Thank you for having me. So I'm a regular RTD rider, and of course, I want to see cuts kept to a minimum, and I really appreciate all the work you guys and staff have done on that. I wanted to propose an alternative to some of these cuts that I think could have less of an impact than cutting routes entirely, which is that if you look at RTD compared to other transit agencies, you're typically middle of the pack in terms of ridership, in terms of coverage, in terms of frequency. But one area where we're actually better is in terms of on-time performance. So RTD buses have an 85% on-time performance rate, which is actually far ahead of the US average, which is around 70%. And that's really great, but it's not free to do that. It actually costs quite a lot to do that. And that's because what you're doing to achieve that is you're scheduling routes to take longer than they actually do on average. And then drivers will either wait at stops or drive slower on purpose to keep with the schedule, which of course requires a lot more service hours. So, this is just an offhand estimate. Of course, you'd want to get staff to come up with real numbers, but I think that if you were to, across the board, speed up bus schedules by just like 3%, that could save around $9 million, which is the same amount needed to run the 16th Street free ride or several of the other bus routes people have mentioned. And even if we did that, we'd still have on-time performance that's way above the US average. So I would urge you to please consider that as an alternative to some of the service cuts, which would bring our frequency from mediocre to bad, bring our ridership from mediocre to bad, our coverage from mediocre to bad, cut off some of these critical lifelines for people. Instead, this would just bring our on-time performance from excellent down to just good. And I think that that's a much better trade-off. Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have the incomparable Doug Tisdale, former RTD director.
Ah, Doug, welcome.
Thank you. May it please the board, I'm Doug Tisdale. For 8 years, I had the privilege of serving as RTD director for District H, including 2 terms as board chair. Today, as I have for the past 8 years, I serve as chair of the Denver Downtown Development Authority. I'm here tonight to address the proposal to eliminate the 16th Street free ride. As a former chair, I understand that looking for cost-cutting measures is a necessary exercise. It's responsible to examine every option. Sometimes exploring even the most misguided hypothetical can spark creative thinking or yield unexpected insights. It's in that spirit that I view this staff proposal. It's an exercise in magical thinking to suggest that this board would ever cancel the free ride. Outside of the A line, no other RTD service matches the success, high ridership, and enthusiastic public support of the free ride. For decades, it's been the economic and logistical lifeline of downtown Denver. It's world-renowned. Years ago, while touring transport for London facilities, which I did on my own dime, transit officials there praised RTD for the 16th Street free ride. They recognize what we must never forget. This service provides fundamental vibrancy and economic vitality that keeps Denver's core alive. We didn't just endure a massive multi-year rebuild of the 16th Street Transitway to abandon it now. That historic investment was made for one reason: to secure another half century of safe, clean, reliable transit connecting Union Station and Civic Center Station. The ongoing revitalization of downtown by the DDDA, including over 1,000 new housing units and dozens of new street-level businesses, relies on this lifeline being protected. I trust this proposal is a purely academic exercise, and I urge the board to reject the staff recommendation and voice your unanimous support for the continuation of the free ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Chair Harwick, we've had one more individual raise their hand just as Director Tisdale was wrapping up his remarks.
Okay.
And that is Corey Gonzalez.
Corey Gonzalez, please state your name and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
So my name's Corey Gonzalez. I fully support and agree with everything that Kristen Heiser, who is the Broomfield Housing Director Director of the Broomfield Housing Alliance. I've spoken before the board a couple of times in advocating for my daughter. She, in a couple months or a month or so, is going to be moving to the Grove. And while we're thankful that Access on Demand wasn't changed to follow the same restrictions as Access-a-Ride, it's proving to be a financial hardship for her. She's on track to spend probably close to about $1,750 on Access on Demand transportation this year. Her income before taxes is $16,000. So this leaves very little, if anything, for necessities such as rent, food, and medication. When she uses Access-a-Ride, she has a Medicaid waiver, and that waiver will pay for her Access-a-Ride tickets. I asked RTD if they would work with service providers, so this DD Medicaid waiver would also cover Access on Demand fares. I mean, even the Live discount fare that she currently has, and I was told that it would not. This is why Access-a-Ride is so important for this population. When Access on Demand becomes unaffordable, individuals will become isolated from friends, family, work, and their broader community. Broomfield needs more transportation, not less. I fully support the extension of Route 53 to increase transit across Broomfield. Extending this route improves access to jobs, healthcare, social activities, and essential services. It also expands mobility for seniors, workers, and people with disabilities, including residents of the Grove at Cottonwood who need access or who need Access-a-Ride service. Reliable public transportation is essential to an inclusive, connected, and economically vibrant community. If you cut these services in Broomfield, our donut hole that's currently 10 miles just becomes even greater, and yet we can continue to contribute to RTD. I just don't know how in good conscience you guys can do something like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Community Chair Harwick, we've had another individual who had their hand raised earlier. It came down, it's back up now, and that is Suzanne Eck.
Okay, Suzanne Eck, please state your name and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my concerns about the proposed reductions, specifically those in Broomfield, which will have a negative effect on my neighbors. My name is Suzanne Eck, and I've spoken at several board meetings over the past year, requesting the point of deviation for the Grove at Cottonwood. The Grove is 750 feet outside of the 3/4 mile boundary for Access-a-Ride. Our request was denied, but our group was encouraged when the RTD board told us of the service change process, and we were ecstatic to hear of the proposed Route 53 extension to St. Anthony North Hospital. Finally, we thought Broomfield would receive a long overdue fixed route. The AAR donut hole would be reduced. But RTD's proposed cuts again puts paratransit services for the IDD residents at the Grove in jeopardy. Broomfield is grateful that RTD took one step forward by reinstating Route 53 during the June service change. RTD is now proposing to take 5 steps backwards in Broomfield. 1, by eliminating Route 53. 2, by eliminating the proposed extension of Route 53 up to St. Anthony North Hospital. 3, by eliminating the critical Broomfield Flex Ride option, which my daughter uses to get to and from work. 4th, eliminating the Interlochen Westmore Flex Ride service. And finally, 5th, by eliminating Route 228, which serves Flatiron Crossing and our neighbors in Superior. As you are aware, RTD has underserved Broomfield for decades. According to your own data, my community receives only 39 cents for every dollar we pay into RTD. I realize the need for a balanced budget, but how is it equitable or logical to make those cuts in a community that already suffers from a lack of RTD service? Cutting services in Broomfield will not balance RTD's budget, but what it would do, it would continue to be an injustice for the area and create a greater imbalance because of the amount of service in Broomfield. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Eck.
Committee Chair Harwick, there are no further hands raised. You all did receive numerous public comments submitted on various components of the proposed service changes, including specifically Route 228, Route AL, and the Route 53, among others. In addition to that, there were public comments in relationship to the various budget scenarios you all will be contemplating this evening. Those majority of those were sent to the RTD.directors listserv, so directors should have access to those vast majority of those comments at this time.
Okay. With no other participants in the queue, we will close the public comment period at this time. We have no presentations from external entities this month. So we're going to move on to discussion items. For today's agenda, we will go slightly out of order and begin with a discussion item related to the 2027 budget deficit reduction concepts and alignment. I would now like to ask GM CEO Johns to present this item to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As introduced, I'm Deborah Johnson, the General Manager and CEO. It's my pleasure to be before you this evening. Before I start, I want to ground us all in what this actually is that we have before us this evening. Pursuant to the board meeting that was held in June, staff was directed to bring back blue sky scenarios relative to a path forward in reference to looking at various scenarios in which to ground us in a path forward relative to ensuring fiscal sustainability. In doing so, staff did put forward those elements, recognizing that these are scenarios in and of themselves, and we were directed to look at varying percentages, which is contained in the information that is before you. Recognizing last evening that staff, as well as various members of the board, convened at the Finance and Planning Committee relative to a path forward, we wanted to ensure the discussions ensued relative to a collective understanding of what might yield us to lean into identifying cost savings whereby we can manage our revenues in relationship to our expenses. With that as a backdrop, there is information that is contained, as we heard this evening with all the public commenters that have taken their time to voice their opinions, perceptions, and attitudes about what is presented. I cannot stress enough that these are just scenarios regarding board's direction relative to talking about what could be. With that as a backdrop, quite naturally, if anything were to come to fruition, staff has to do their due diligence in accordance with our board adopted service standards. Moreover, looking at service equity analyses in conjunction with the board adopted Title VI plan relative to service equity. And as we talk about any adjustment to fares, that's in alignment with Title VI as it relates to fare equity as well. Mr. Chair, I don't know if it would be pertinent to go over the scenarios because those were just for illustrative purposes, but keeping in mind that what we are seeking as staff is clear-cut direction from this body, whereby it would ensure that we understood the path forward relative to identifying what might be most meaningful to deliver a balanced budget. So if it is your desire to delve any deeper, more than happy to have staff do that, recognizing my comments that I made moments ago relative to the scenarios that are for illustrative purposes, which I believe have been lost in translation just by virtue of the dissemination of materials. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll yield the floor and seek direction from your perspective. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, GMCO Johnson. And given that they're just scenarios and we don't know really where the state of things are at right now, I don't think it's necessary for us to go into them right now. That being said, I'm going to offer any questions from our committee members. Okay. Oh, Vice Chair Chandler sneaking her hand in right there.
Thank you, Chair Harwick. I just want to make a comment. I appreciate all of the staff work that has gone into this. That has been very difficult to have the continuation of additional scenarios added on and on and on. So I just want to say thank you for taking on the board's heart. Many of us, want to have different scenarios, so we have different options. And so I just want to say thank you to the staff for doing such yeoman's work to get us these options. So thank you.
All right, and seeing no other hands, I'm going to move to recommended actions. And this one, you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to talk a lot. So if I trip over my tongue, just forgive me. The first action will be presented separately in each. This is also a bit of a recap last night. Last night, this item was presented by Committee Chair Banker during Finance and Planning Committee, and I will present it during tonight's Operations Safety and Security meeting. Before asking for a motion, second, and discussion, I would like to briefly outline the process we will be following for this item. This process is intended to ensure that each committee has the opportunity to provide its recommendation prior to the board's final action on July 28th. I just want to make that clear. We are looking for a final answer that we will be able to bring to the board for July 28th meeting. To ensure consistency throughout the committee review process, I'm asking that we vote on the recommended action as provided in the committee packet. The final language to be amended and voted on at the July board meeting. The committee has a great deal to discuss and decide this evening. In the board report, which is on page 47 of our packets, you will see the following language. During the Wednesday, July 15, 2026 Operations Safety and Security Committee meeting, the committee recommended the following: X% service reduction and XX financial annual savings target. We're going to fill in our preference tonight by consensus, just as the Finance Planning Committee provided their preference last night. It is important that the Operations Safety and Security Committee follow the same process followed by the Finance and Planning Committee. The board office will update the board report to reflect each committee's recommendation. A consolidated summary will be available for the Executive Committee meeting on Thursday, July 23rd. Any amendments to the recommended action language should be made during the July 28th meeting so that all directors have the opportunity to participate in determining the final service reduction percentages and associated cost savings. I want to also note that our packet contained materials that were examples. We were provided an example list of potential modifications to these services. The board is not approving any cuts to any service at this time. Any service reductions will be formally proposed in the future and will be subject to public review. Just want to sort of bold that one. Be proposed in the future and subject to public review. What was provided in the packet and what will ultimately be approved will be very different. With that, we'll move to our first item for the proposed 2027 budgeted service reductions. And now I would like to motion, I would like a motion to approve the recommended action language as well as the associated Finance and Planning Committee recommendation. As a reminder, the recommendation action language is the Board of Directors instructs staff to build the proposed 2027 budget based on X percentage service reductions that are estimated to save X amount of dollars. These changes would take effect no later than May-June 2027 service changes. And the committee recommended languages during Tuesday, July 14, 2026, the Finance and Planning Committee meeting. The committee recommended the following X% service reduction and the financial savings target. Do we have a motion? Mr. Kroll.
I think there was just a mistake there in the script where you were indicating finance and planning and just indicate operations.
Sorry.
So that's fine.
I was just cruising right on through. Okay, so I will restate that. During Wednesday, July 15, 2026, the Operations Safety and Security meeting, the committee recommended the following X% service reduction and the X financial annual savings target. Do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
All right, I hear Director Bouquet. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, and Vice Chair Chandler. Okay. At this time, I would ask those directors who have questions or who wish to speak to raise their virtual hands, and I will call you in turn. For directors or staff calling into the meeting, if you wish to speak, please press *9. Okay, Vice Chair Chandler.
Just a point of clarification, Chairman Harwick. Are we actually looking at giving you the X and the XX? I mean, is that what you really want us to do? I feel that's, what we are trying to strive at. So my thoughts are that I would like to see the 10% reduction with a savings of $31 million as stated through the packet as received from staff. That would be my recommendations. And the reason I'm saying that is because it is, in my mind, it's acceptable to do that modest amount of reduction with hopes that we can continue to save additional monies through attrition and all of the other saving mechanisms that we've implemented. And perhaps by then have some additional revenue streams that might come in, but also with the COA on the horizon. I just think that there's so many things that are coming down the pike. I know that we need to make deeper cuts, but I'm not sure that we need to do them this minute, this time. So that would be my recommendation, is that we do a 10% service cut reduction and save $31 million as seen in our packet.
Okay. I did not time you, so I'm not going to time anybody else on this go round, but if need be, I will implement the 2-minute timer. I'm just giving everybody a heads up. Director Whitmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the statement by Director Chandler is an amendment to fill in the X's, if you will, I'm not sure that's the case, but I would second that for the sake of discussion. Maybe Mr. Kroll can weigh in on what the procedure is to fill in the X's, but I'm assuming that's what it is.
Yeah, we'll make an amendment. I just want to get everybody's feedback, and then if that's what holds, then we'll move forward with that.
All right. So while I have the floor, then I don't like any of the numbers that we have to deal with, but we do have to deal with them. So at this point, I would be in favor of the 10% number, 31 million to start. So you won't need to come back to me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Director Bouquet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So in regards to last night's conversation, I just need clarification. Did I hear from staff that bare minimum recommendation would be 50 million in cuts?
Theirs was they voted 0% cuts last night.
I know, but when I was listening into the meeting last night, what I heard from Miss Mackey, and please correct me if I'm wrong, staff, was that 17 and a half, 50 million was recommended. So that's where my confusion was, because I know last night they voted for zero. Where my confusion is, if we're hearing from, our C-suite employees that this is what we have to do, bare minimum, compared to I'm hearing from another committee that we don't want any cuts. I'm just curious if we go forward with no cuts or we go forward with a 10%, which is less than what staff is recommending. Where are we finding that difference? So that's what I need help with.
Do you want to? Okay, there we go.
Miss Mackey.
CFO Mackey.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. So the April staff recommendation was the 20%, which is $62 million. And in the discussion last evening, I was indicating that I would feel comfortable with the 17.5, which was about $54 million.
Director Bouquet.
So I'm a little cautious then, because Miss Mackey just said $54 million. We had one committee, half of our directors just vote for zero. That's just something to consider, just with my fellow directors in regards to it. Again, I personally lean towards, at first I was like more aggressive when it came down to cuts itself. We have to strategize this from a long-term perspective, and I think the best strategy is minimum cuts so that we still build good graces with the voter base when we go back in 2028. And it's not a question if, it is a question that when we go back in 2028. And so that's one thing considered, just long-term goals. Is it smart to be this aggressive with the cuts? That where I'm just worried though is we're hearing, two different things. We as the policymakers, half the board is saying we're not wanting any cuts. And then we're hearing from our full-time staff that bare minimum, we're wanting 54 million. I'll come back to it. That's why I'm just cautious with the numbers going forward, because I need someone to help me make sense with it. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so I don't want any cuts, but I'm going to support them anyway, because just because I don't want any doesn't mean I also don't recognize that we have to make them. The only thing worse than not making cuts now is running out of money in 2029 if that ballot measure fails, or having to make cuts in 2028 as we are going into the season of trying to pass the ballot measure. People will forgive cuts made now. They won't forgive them if we have to make them in 2028 right before they vote. I'm deeply uncomfortable at 30 million, but I'm comfortable enough to go along with my very, very smart colleagues if that's what they think is the right thing to do, and we can have a further conversation about it. My biggest thing is I think this needs to scale up over time. I'd like to see some cuts start in January. I think there are some services that we have that we could cut by the end of the year. I think there are some services we would cut in May. I think there are some services we would cut in September, and to increase cuts more gently over that, year and a half period. And if we find more money, great, fantastic. Then we don't have to keep cutting. If we don't, if things turn south, if the, financial situation gets more unfavorable, then we do have to keep cutting. But, I'm not willing to play, Russian roulette with the agency's finances under the assumption that we pass a ballot measure in 2028, as much as I think we probably will. So, I don't want to do any cuts, but I'll go along with Director Chandler and Director Whitmore's proposal for 30 million.
Director Larson.
Thank you. Chair Harwick,
So yeah, I'm on the Finance and Planning Committee, and I was one of the people who voted for zero cuts yesterday. And I think we need to understand that the recommendations that staff is giving us are, are come out of a logical place. We have a fiscal policy that requires us and says we're going to abide by certain ratios and certain approaches to spending and budgeting, and they are what they're recommending for us to do is what we kind of would have to do to stay in line with that fiscal policy. They're also recommending what they're recommending for us to do is to do what makes sense, uh, because it's not their job to think about the politics and kind of the long-term plan for keeping this agency funded quite the same way that it is our job. So I think, their recommendations are coming from a very sensible place. But we don't have to follow those recommendations. The agency, our staff can find other ways to finance the business for at least 2027, probably 2028 as well. And the politics to me, as Director Bouquet said, are very clear that we will need to go to the ballot, and we will need to use that and hopefully be able to use that to solve our structural deficit. And so I think that we need to think about it politically, and decide whether we think that the best approach to that ballot measure is going through a process of rescinding service, is going through a process that will make our options to make service better much more limited than they otherwise would be, to go through a process that would in part preempt this COA that we're just starting now. I think we don't have to do that. It's a political decision whether or not we do that. It's a political decision whether or not what the fiscal policy is. We can change the fiscal policy, or we can just make decisions as we have done in the past that don't follow the fiscal policy, and we can decide to keep service at least in 2027 at its current levels in terms of service hours, and move forward with a COA process that will give us far better insights than we can get any other way into, if we do want to cut service, where it should be and how it should fit into our long-term planning. So I would recommend that you all vote not to cut any service, and think about the politics of this. And that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Director Busick.
Thanks. I agree with a lot of what Director Larson just said. I'm a zero kind of a guy. Let's remember our mission statement, shall we? We make lives better through connections, not through eliminating connections, not through cutting connections. Here's some things that we can cut that don't make any sense that can save us some money. Broncos ride, Taylor Swift ride, Rockies ride. Let's start wrapping trains again, because the people on their phones, looking at their phones, aren't looking at those windows anyway. And that train to Fort Collins, forget it. Money saved. Thank you.
Director Pagliari.
Thank you. This is Director Pagliari. A couple questions and a comment. The question is for scenario 2 in the packet. It says 2028 ending cash is $12 million. So that means we could run service until the end of 28 without any cuts and not go into the negatives.
CFO Mackey.
No, we would actually need more than $12 million available. There's other restrictions related to that as well. And staff does recommend a minimum of $200 million in cash balances.
Thank you. I do think it's promising that we could make it to the end of 2028 and not have a negative balance. I think in that case, then I would probably support no service reductions or a minimal service reduction. And then when 2028 ballot measure comes to pass, we make cuts when we either do or do not have the money to continue service at the current service levels. That's my recommendation. Thanks.
Director Rusha.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Thanks for letting us S&P folks speak tonight.
Please.
Thank you. So I was the lone director who did not vote for no cuts, although quite naturally I never want to do cuts. It stinks. And so my position right now, with an asterisk, take it with a grain of salt, is I think we need to look at 30 million in cuts. Borrow for buses, not a $500 million worth, maybe $40 million worth. That will give us a short-term cash infusion to help us with next year. And I hate to say this because I know it's not popular with staff, but I really think we need to have that tough conversation about pausing retirement benefits. It can be a temporary pause. I'm sure a lot of you guys have a 401k at your workplace, or you have. I remember where I worked, our 401k contributions were paused during COVID, and they stayed paused for 2.5 years. We are contributing 9% of our employee salary towards a government-like 401k structure, and I think it is reasonable for us to put it on the table that we pause that temporarily. It would save $12 million a year. And I never thought I would be fussing about $1 or $2 or $12 million for a budget as large as ours, but this is the emergency we're in. And then finally, I do know that the ideas I just brought forth still put us at under 200 million, which is, I know staff likes to have at least that in unrestricted. I am comfortable, absent staff giving a very good reason why we couldn't, going under that 200 million temporarily to coast until like the first quarter of 2029. So I think that, so that for me, that's the kind of package that I would like to vote on, and I'm hoping that my colleagues give consideration to, and I would love to hear from, Ms. Mackey, if not this meeting, in like follow-ups, if she thinks that is within the realm of possibility, without putting us at too much financial risk. Like at the end of the day, any decision we make is risky. If we do very deep cuts, which makes sense math-wise, it's a political risk that can bite us later. If we get too risky with our reserves or cash and we're running on steam, that's a financial risk. And so anyway, I just those are the ideas that I had. And if those like genuinely can't work, then I think we have to look at potentially 40 or $50 million in cuts, which would be devastating. But running out of cash would also be devastating. Having a train come off the tracks because we didn't do maintenance would also be devastating. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to make these tough decisions. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. CFO Mackey?
Yes, I think I heard the question was, again, could we get down to $12 million in cash? And based on the size of RTD's accounts payable and payroll obligations, I don't think that's possible. But obviously last year in the 5-year financial forecast, as well as the 5-year financial forecast that was discussed last evening, both proposed financing to boost cash levels.
Director Bruce, is that a follow-up question?
No, I didn't say that we should get down to $12 million in cash. Wait, that wasn't me. No. I said if we went under 200 million, I would be okay. Not down to 12 million. Is that, I don't know if I misread what your response was. When I said 12 million, I was referring to a temporary pause in retirement contributions, because that would be about $12 million a year. So I'm not sure if we got our wires crossed, but that was my position. Thanks.
Okay, I got a bunch of hands, so I'm gonna go out of order because they haven't spoken yet. So I'm gonna go to Director Guzman, and then after that, I'm putting the 2-minute timer on it just for the sake of time, but only after he's spoken, because I didn't do that to anybody else. So Director Guzman.
Hey, thank you so much. So last night's conversation, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, go for it.
Okay,
You're good.
perfect. Last night's conversation on finance and planning was really messy, to say the least. And so it is hard to follow. And to Director Bouquet's point, I'm on the committee and I still don't understand what we were attempting to do in that situation. My comment last evening with regards to what you're discussing now is that the 17.5% was what the board asked as kind of the middle ground of where we should be. And there's a dollar amount assigned to it. And we were asked to speak about dollar amounts and not percentages, and it went back and forth. So super confusing, clear as mud, like always. This is the sausage making of doing governance. However, we should probably really consider deeply how doing any cuts affect the constituents that use our service. And any amount of cutting, or in our case on the other committee, the raising of fares also leads to attrition of customers. And so we need to have a long thought process and a long view of what doing any of these actions requires. I did vote for a $0 amount last night because I could not understand what we were recommending, and it kept changing throughout the night. And so that was the one that I understood the number on. So I look to you as the operations committee to make a recommendation for all of us, but don't rely on just the conversation we had last night. I can tell you that my vote was more based out of confusion than it was out of clear understanding of what we were supposed to be doing. And I think you're handling the conversation much differently than we did in the other committee. And we did not give clear direction to staff about what we expect last evening. So I hope that that does come through this committee tonight. And so for what it's worth, and I'm looking at my phone and seeing Director Bouquet, I appreciate the concern about half the directors saying one thing and half saying another. I don't think that that will hold through this entire conversation until we're actually in the room. And so you should feel free to make a recommendation that suits this committee's purposes, and don't look too heavily towards finance and planning, because frankly, we had numbers changing left and right before we made that vote. And reviewing the transcript today was an issue for me. I'm not even sure that the way that we did it was proper and in order. So I just want to put that there to dismiss any doubt from your committee members. I agree with Joanne about looking at other options up to and including what we're paying for benefits, since we have overpaid the last couple of years through our budget process into retirement funds, and have a serious conversation there, as much as I hate to say that. And I also think that we can look at some financing options that will help the agency in the next couple of years with another major spend coming up within the decade. And so those are all considerations that have to be made from a planning perspective and a financing perspective. But every bit of the money that we spend on buses, on trains, on fuel, on rubber tires or steel tires comes back to serve the community and comes back to serve our constituents. So thank you. That's all I have. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, just a reminder, I'm putting a 2-minute timer on everybody from here on out. So Director Bouquet, you've got 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Guzman, for that context. I really appreciate it. So again, just to my curiosity, Ms. Mackey, or staff in general, we obviously heard an appetite from the other committee, but now we're hearing an appetite here. Or I've heard 3 directors on this committee who have expressed an appetite for $30 million, 10%, whatever you want to call it as 10%, or if you want to call it as a dollar amount. That's still lower than what staff is recommending. So my question would be, is that if that appetite exists for the board and the board goes forward with either what's recommended from OSS tonight or what is recommended from last night's F&P meeting, and obviously we're going to have this discussion as a full board, if we're falling short compared to where staff is comfortable, where do we make up that difference?
Dave O'Mackey. GMCO Johnson, I'll see your hand. So I don't know who wants to go.
Mr. Chair, I will allow CFO Mackey to go forward and I'll supplement as appropriate. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So, I mean, that difference could come from a number of places. It could come from additional financing and reserves. It could come from adjusting the timing of certain projects and outflows of capital expenditures. So there's definitely different levers that we can pull to make up the difference.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I can just supplement, Ms. Mackey hit the nail on the head. What we would do relative to what she just stated is assess what we have readily available to ensure that our expenses were in pace with our revenues, and we would double back because that could mean some other impacts, other parts of the organization. As I have stated in numerous occasions, that we are people moving people. We are a labor intensive organization. 2/3 of our budget basically is predicated upon labor. And so while we have heard from this body that we want to minimize any impact to our people, and I'm a firm believer of that as well, we're going to be faced with some difficult decisions because bad news doesn't get better with time. And so we will be in a precarious position where we're going to have to adjust, and this will just come for full circle at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Nicholson, you've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I have just a couple of very quick questions for Ms. Mackey. If we were to make 0 cuts right now, and if we were to find 0 additional revenue from fare increases and other things, and we were to be running that $60 million hole, how soon would we be unable to make payroll and meet our obligations? What would be the situation we would be living in 2028 and 2029 in that circumstance?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Yes. So based on the 5-year financial forecast that was presented last evening, we would not bring cash and equivalents probably below 200 million because we would take out additional financing, additional debt to make sure that we would be in a good position. Does that answer your question?
Not really. Are you based? I mean, it sounds like you're saying if we can have 0 cuts, we'll just borrow more money and all of this is moot, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
So what's if we can just borrow? I guess my question then would be, if we can just borrow more money to cover our debts, why don't we do that rather than make service cuts?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Please.
It's a trade-off because first of all, it doesn't follow the fiscal policy to take out debt to sustain operations. It shifts the burden to beyond 5 years from now. One might call it future generations, future boards. It doesn't balance the budget, so expenditures will continue to outpace revenues. So it makes RTD in a continued precarious financial situation going forward. But I do understand the argument to delay difficult decisions for a little while to see if we might be successful at a ballot measure.
One final one very quickly.
Last one.
And how long can we do that for? Like, would you consider it fiscally responsible to make 0 cuts given given where the agency is financially?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Please.
0 cuts. This is very subjective assessment. Personally, I don't think it's responsible.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Director Larson, you got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to kind of emphasize what CFO Mackey just said. We can, in fact, avoid service cuts for probably 2 years by using financing measures against things like buses instead of paying cash for them. Now, I would agree, this is a more risky approach than just doing cuts now from a purely financial perspective, because it could put us in a situation where we don't pass a ballot measure in 2028 and we have to make more drastic cuts in 2029, because it's true, we cannot sustain the level of service that we have with any kind of financial and fiduciary responsibility without either getting more revenue or making cuts. But I think, for a short term, during this period when we are coming up on what will probably be the best chance for us to raise revenue in the next 6 years, in about 2 years, and when we are trying to completely kind of reimagine the way our service is configured, and shouldn't have to worry about preempting that with cuts before we're done with that process. I think financing is the way to go. We don't have to decide to do it in 2028 today or right now. Should decide to do it in 2027, not make any cuts right now, and keep an eye on what's happening. But we do not have to do cuts. We can choose to be a little bit less responsible. I'm not going to expect a CFO to tell us to be a little bit less financially responsible, but because that's our job if we want to do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Larson. Okay, Director Rusha, you're the final. You got the final 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. So this is for Ms. Mackey, and I apologize for putting you on the spot again. But we have talked about anything between, $40 million in borrowing to $500 million in borrowing. There's quite a delta. Is there a number by which you would feel like ballpark comfortable with? And I'm sorry to ask this like on the spot. And just like as I said before in the last meeting, we're up to our eyeballs in debt over fast tracks. I don't like taking on more debt. I do think it might be okay in the short term, a smaller amount, but I just wanted to hear from you if there is, a number between 0 and $500 million that we could be comfortable with. Thank you.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Please.
That is also a relatively subjective question, but if I look at the materials that were reviewed last evening, the debt service that RTD has to pay over the next 5 years is roughly between $260 million and it goes up to $300 million in 2031. Currently, obviously, we're working on some bond refundings that'll improve that. So the difficulty is we take out additional debt, then it could impact our credit ratings negatively, which could make the debt more expensive for us. As well as those debt service payments would increase, which is currently not in those models because we would need to decide, do those debt payments increase sooner or does it happen after 2031, right? So it definitely adds more risk. And if there was an economic downturn, then that's also a factor to consider because then sales and use tax revenue could decline. So by taking out more debt, yes, it is possible, but it does add risk. Without looking at it deeply, I hate to give you a number right now, but I think based on what staff was recommending last year as well as this year, I would be comfortable, I think, with up to $500 million for 2028.
Okay, Director, I said that I was going to cancel. I see your hand. If you can keep this extremely briefly, you can go. But if you drag it out, I'm going to cut you off.
Yes, so I don't know if this is the okay time to make a suggestion for what we do, but I would say we should move a recommendation as an amendment to the board packet, not to the recommended action, because I know we have to keep that alone, and this is what they did yesterday, to ask staff bring us an amount of cuts not to exceed 31 million, which is 10%. Because I recognize listening to Ms. Mackey, listening to the board members, that it does sound like there is some flexibility there with financing. And I kind of want to leave it up to our staff to say, I think you all know kind of where the board is at right now. It does seem like there's a limit to how far we want to go, but I don't know personally whether or not we really need to do 30 million or whether we really do need to do 30 million. And for me, at least, that kind of depends on what you tell me, Ms. Mackey. So I would rather just say for now, not it has to be 30 million, but you have room up to 30 million. Please find a way to make it whatever you think is fiscally responsible within that range, basically, and come back to us with something that should make us not run screaming from trying to be, completely fiscally irresponsible.
Okay. All right. No more questions. I am now going to move to amend the committee's recommendation listed in the board report to be 10% service reduction and not to exceed 30 million annual savings target. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Vice Chair, I got Whitmore as my second. Now I'm going to take a vote.
Well, I have a point of clarification.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Vice Chair Chandler.
You said 10% and the actual amount is 31. So I would ask that maybe you say 31 just to keep in line with what the recommendations are. Director Nicholson said 30, but according to the packet and all of the stuff, it's 31.
Okay, yep, sorry, my bad. I will amend that to 31 million. I have a second from Director Whitmore. And now we will take a vote. All right, Director Bouquet.
No.
Okay. Director Busick.
No.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
Yes.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
4, and I'm also a yes, so I have 5 yeses and 2 noes. This motion passes.
And as a reminder, Committee Chair Harwick, you now need to make a vote on the overall item. So that was the motion to amend. Now you just need to hold a vote on the main motion, which was the language you read earlier, inclusive of the recommended action and the committee's recommendation.
Okay, now I will do that. Now I would like to like a motion to approve the recommended act.
You don't need a motion to approve it. You already got it. You just need a vote to approve.
Oh, okay. Now I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Kroll. I appreciate that. Now I will take another vote to approve the main motion. Director Bouquet.
No.
Okay. Director Busick.
No.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
We.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Again, that is 5 yeses and 2 noes, and the motion passes. Give me a second to catch up with where I'm at. And our second action is for the high volume event service pilot amendment for the board of directors to amend the recommended actions related to the high volume event service pilot for the 2026-2027 Denver Broncos season approved on June 23rd, 2026, and to direct staff to continue collaborative planning with the Denver Broncos organization and regional partners for the implementation of the pilot for the 2027-2028 Denver Broncos season. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Whitmore is my mover. Do I have a second?
Second, Bouquet.
Bouquet, thank you. All right. Now I'd like to ask our CEO, Deborah Johnson, and Jesse Carter, Director of Service Planning and Scheduling, to present this item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As it relates to the recommended action before you, you may recall during the course of the June 2026 board meeting whereby the board was having a discussion about this action and asked staff to keep this body apprised should we not be able to bring this to fruition. After coordinating with the Broncos organization and learning of some limitations relative to where they were with the preparation for the 2026 season, executive leadership of the Broncos shared with us that they would prefer to work in a collaborative fashion with a myriad of different external entities for the 2027 season to ensure that we could be successful on the delivery of any such high volume event service. With that as a backdrop, staff has a myriad of work to do relative to ensuring that we are adhering to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, of which this body approves each year to ensure that we are putting safety first and foremost. I broached that topic as relates to a myriad of different elements, recognizing that when one moves buses, a standard 40-foot bus, one has to take into consideration turning radii, in addition to infrastructure support and things of the like. I want to assure this committee that staff and I are committed into ensuring that we could work in a collaborative and amicable fashion, not only with the Broncos, but the city and county of Denver and other external entities in close proximity to the Bronco site. With that, we are asking for an amendment recognizing the action that was taken because RTD cannot ensure that this comes to fruition alone. And so with that as a backdrop, wanted to provide that information in this public forum and for your edification. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from the committee or other board members? Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there were 9 different venues mentioned in the, or opportunities mentioned in the resolution, recognizing that the Broncos are off the table until 2027. is the agency going to be able to implement Resolution 12, the high volume events resolution, in any form in 2026?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Please.
This item in particular that's before you is specifically about service to the Broncos, recognizing the recommended action that the board put forward, considering that in October of 2025, the board passed a recommended action instructing staff to double back with the board in the February 2026 timeframe relative to a plan. Staff did bring that forward, and what spawned from that plan was the direction to leverage service to the Broncos. If in fact the board deems staff to work in a different manner relative to any other venues, staff most certainly is open to doing that. But just for clarification, as we move forward, staff is currently working in tandem with the organizers of Sundance, considering the criticality of that high volume event to the betterment of the economic outlook for the region as a whole. In addition, staff has been working with other high volume event venues as relates to ensuring that we could leverage optimal service as we move forward. So with that as context, Secretary Nicholson, if there is something different that the board would like, I would appreciate a collective understanding from the board as a body, so staff can work diligently and earnestly in ensuring that expectations are met. Thank you.
Director Busick, do you mind if I ask a follow-up question?
No, go right ahead.
GMCEO Johnson, so thinking about this high volume events in the future, and obviously myself and Director Banker were the two that pushed this forward. As we're thinking about other high volume events, what is the, like, for you and your staff, what is the optimum cadence for us to bring about a request for high volume events around future service for those requests? What would be the window of time?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Going back to a previous item whereby I stated that we are people moving people, and the vast majority of our budget is focused on labor. We have to ensure that we have appropriate staff to deliver said service, and in doing so, recognizing that we have 3 service changes a year, we have to ensure that we're adhering to the tenets of our collective bargaining agreement by ensuring that we have appropriate shift work. I see Mr. Carter, who serves as our Director of Service Planning and Scheduling, who has come off camera. And the reason I broach that is I don't want to get too technical, but there's a process in which we leverage relative to developing schedules and ensuring that we're balancing the network and that we have available equipment and people, not only just equipment, but as relates to the expectations around delivering services, recognizing that we have to ensure the infrastructure support as well. And so recognizing the question that you pose, it would be in alignment with our service changes and also what that trade-off is, considering the discussion that has ensued this evening relative to our limited resources and the difficult decisions that are before us. So I would basically pose to this body a question relative to ensuring that we can provide our day-to-day service in reference to supplemental service as we go forward as well. So staff and I are available to confer and have conversations about what might be optimal, because we quite naturally do want to adhere to our mission of making lives better through connections, but not at the expense of diminishing connections for those that are most vulnerable. Mr. Carter, if I may, Mr. Chair, Mr. Carter, is there any other information you'd like to supplement in reference to my statements? Please feel free to do so.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Okay, thank you, CEO GM Johnson. One thing I would like to remind the committee is that many of our events will require us to look at using venues and venue space. So that does take some negotiation, as was the case with the Empower Field and the Denver Broncos organization, whereas we were trying to implement service requiring 92 vehicles that would have required 25 rows of their parking lot. which is currently dedicated to VIP parking. If we're going to have that type of impact on an organization, be it the Denver Broncos, the Rockies, or whoever, we need to advance negotiation with those entities. And that does take a bit more time, even outside of what CEO Johnson mentioned, the run board, but we need even more time to make sure that we have access to those venues. So that's what I would have to add.
Okay. Director Busick?
Thanks. I'll be a no vote because it's just in keeping with what I've said in the past. I still have an incredibly difficult time trying to square these concepts. Cutting services, creating bringing back services or creating new services that help a very limited group of people, but still cost a lot of money. In a perfect world, high volume event services are fantastic and they're an incredible marketing tool. We are not living in a perfect world right now. We need to really rethink that. I hope that my fellow directors will think long and hard about when we bring these things back and pick a better time. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Nicholson? Well, you've already gone. I'm going to go to Whitmore and then I'll come back to you, okay? Director Whitmore.
Thank you. And I certainly align with Director Busick on this factor, but we're talking about a pilot program and we're talking about a service that has been successful in the past. Granted, we do not have the same facilities, and I certainly would not justify this over regular services. But the number one thing I hear in my district is, when are you bringing the Bronco ride back? And one of the most common complaints is trains not running after a regularly scheduled Rockies game and people being left high and dry. It is a wonderful marketing tool, and it may be the only thing that maybe this select group of people utilizes that RTD offers. But by golly, they vote, and we need their support and their friends' support in 2028. So just those thoughts. Again, a pilot program, it may not work in 26 or 27, but we also need to be cognizant of how important these kind of services are for the future of our fair cities and RTD as we look at a new multi-use stadium at Burnham Yards. So just a few points. I'll probably be a yes vote, but I certainly have to hold my nose a bit, Director Busick.
Okay. Sorry, Chris, I'm going to go with Vice Chair Chandler, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to echo what Director Whitmore just said as well. The number one question or the number one comment I get is, when are you going to implement high volume events? I mean, this is something that we continually get. These people only use the service maybe 3, 4, 5 times a year at the most, and they are being left high and dry as well as anybody else. And I'm not saying that we should cater to a specific population, but they also pay taxes and they don't use the service very often. And when they do, it should be excellent. So I agree that you can't, cut this in or add service in lieu of those that use it every day, but there needs to be a balance. And if you want to be a world-class city, then you need to have at least, some service to those those large volume events. So although I'm going to be a yes vote on this, not because it's the Broncos, but because it's service to all of these events. I think, to me, it's been such a sad thing to see people not being able to get downtown, not being able to get back from a Rockies game, not being able to go to a concert. There's lots of reasons why people go downtown, and our hub and our system is set up that way. So I think we need to service them. So we do make things better through connection, and that means to those that only ride it 4 or 5 times a year. So that's my comments as well. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Director Nicholson.
Yeah, so when the board makes a decision and we pass a resolution like that, we should keep working on it until we deliver on it. We still have 6 months, 5 months left in the year. At the previous meeting, we allocated $1.6 million, $1,681,567 toward this type of special service. So here's my amendment to cut what's in the recommended action right now and say, the board allocates $1,681,567. Sorry, an amount not to exceed $1,681,567 to implement high volume event service in 2026 according to the high volume event resolution, from 2025. Basically, here's the money, get it done, you figure it out. So at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, my grandmother just turned off the light, I want to let staff solve this one. I don't want it coming back to us. Here's the money. You have the plan already. Just do it. And so that's my resolution. I hope that I can get a second, and I hope that we can get 4 votes to make some kind of high volume event service happen this year.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, I'll take a vote. Director Bouquet.
Could I make a comment since now
Sure.
we have an amendment? Okay.
Please.
So in regards to it, so I really appreciate it because there is like 2 trains of thought when it comes to it. One is when it comes to it, yes, there's a lot of excitement for this. We want to implement this as quickly as possible. And as Director Nicholson has pointed out, this is what's been seen through the resolution. But what has also been pointed out from our chair, from Chair O'Keefe, is if you mess this up and you implement it, there's a lot of folks when it comes down to it. If we're not ready and if we're trying to get it and if we're trying to rush something past, you're going to lose a bunch of people in my district. You're going to lose a lot of people in the suburban district when it comes down to it. And I think it is twofold when it comes to it is where's our staff at it with us? And if we're hearing that it's going to be, the 2027, 2028 Broncos season, that's we're going to be ready. That's half of it. The other half is the Denver Broncos themselves. And if they can, supply the space, supply the resources when it comes to it, I'd rather us wait, take our time and make sure that this is as successful as possible rather than try to rush forward with anything. And if you rush forward with it, you could be losing hundreds, thousands of people if it's implemented poorly. So I would keep with the original language. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
So to be clear, there are 9 different types of service mentioned in the high volume events menu. I agree, Broncos is off the table. They've said they don't have the capacity to do it. We shouldn't try. We've already said publicly, we can't do it. We shouldn't try. There are Avalanche games, there are Nuggets games, there are Rockies games. There are plenty of other things that are in that memo that staff diligently prepared, and we should do one of the other 8. And I don't want the board to go round and round on what that should be. We should just say, here's the money. We passed the memo last year. You guys figure it out. And that's to me what governance level thought looks like. We shouldn't be getting into the weeds on this one. We've made it clear what we want. We should just give them the money and tell them to do it.
Vice Chair Chandler.
I have a question. Is that 1.6 million that you're just allocating, Director Nicholson, is that the full amount that includes the estimation of adding the Bronco ride-on for this year? I just think that is an excessive amount of money if that Bronco ride portion is not in that. So perhaps that dollar amount could be lowered in light of what we just had a discussion about with the budget. I don't know that, but that would be my recommendation. Not to exceed, I get that. And maybe with that Bronco portion no longer in that mix, that will actually be lower. But I just want to make that comment because I think that's important.
Chris, do you mind if I ask a question of staff? GMCO Johnson, from what our previous conversations have been around this, if Director Nicholson's amendment passes, does staff have the capacity to take this 1.6 million and provide additional service for any of the remaining high volume events that would exist over the next 5.5 months?
Thank you so much, Chair Harwick, for the question. I'd be remiss not to state it's not just about money. We can't do this by ourselves. As we talk about Avalanche, while the Nuggets weren't mentioned, they are at the same sporting event venue. There is anticipated construction relative to parking lots and the availability. We as staff have met with the venues, and basically what has been shared with us that people traditionally are walking from Union Station and or utilizing the stop there at our area to access the venue. That's just contextual. While we can have discussions and staff is committed to moving forward, what we produced back in February was just that, a plan. We still have to do our due diligence. I made reference to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. What I can commit to you is that, yes, we can explore this, but it's contingent upon RTD working in tandem with the myriad of stakeholders to ensure that this service could come to fruition. More to the point, I would like to ask Mr. Carter, as well as he has spoken earlier about the vast aspects that need to come to fruition relative to the infrastructure requirements, what might be needed as it relates to any type of rubber tire services. And then more to the point, as we look at deploying additional consists, keeping in mind if we want to create a more frequent throughput, we have to look at our traction power. There are some limitations as it relates to how the system was designed. But with that, Mr. Carter, I would ask you, feel free to offer comments to the contrary of what I stated, because I want to ensure that we're providing an accurate picture to the board. So with that, I yield the floor.
Thank you, CEO Johnson. One thing I do want to mention, and it hasn't really come up in our conversation yet, is the service that we currently offer via rail to special events. We shouldn't forget the fact that we do provide later service on our inline and with our services that go into the Denver Union Station. One thing that we could look at is possibly looking at, as long as it works with both FTA, FRA, and DOT guidelines, upping the level of service that goes beyond game times to perhaps satisfy some of our customers using Coors Field, and perhaps some also that are closer to the DUS facility, like at the Ball Arena. I always forget the name of it because most of the time I think of the Avalanche because they've been winning. So not to say the Nuggets did not have a good year, they did. So I think where I could best leave any comment that I have at this point in time is I think we need a little more time to give you an idea of what we could do in 2026. Looking at the fact that preseason for Avalanche, I believe, begins in September of this year, September 20th, and knowing that the other types of events, I don't know exactly what's going on in terms of concerts that are available coming into this winter. So I need a bit more time to get information back as to what we could actually provide as far as high volume event service.
GMCO Johnson, I see your hand.
Yeah, and just one other point that I just wanted to emphasize for this body and for those that are tuning in. Staff and I have been working in tandem with Sundance. As we know, that's a big economic driver for the region. And we have been actively engaged. Mr. Carter and the chair and I are going to be involved with a meeting with the organizers just on Monday as we go forward. So as we talk about high volume events, that most definitely qualifies as one. So I wanted to ensure that everybody had that understanding. Thank you.
Director Nicholson, and then Director Ruscia, and then I may or may not add something.
I guess here's my thing. I think the reason we are here right now is because last fall we didn't say, here's $1.6 million, figure it out. And we went round and round and round with plans and approvals and whatever, and I just don't care. I trust staff to figure out how to deliver on this resolution in the best way possible. And if the answer to that is it's not possible to do any of it at all, that literally we can't find a single high volume event in that resolution that we can deliver on, then that's where we end up at the end of the year. but it's like giving someone $100 and saying, go to the pizza store and get me as many pizzas as you can. I mean, that's a gross simplification, but like the problem here is we are too involved in this. I think what we want is high volume event service and not to go 10 rounds on the details and what's possible and whatever. We just want staff to deliver it with whatever money we allocate for it, the best that you're able to. And if that's not something that we can say as a board, go figure it out, then I have a real problem with that, because that's the level of governance that I think we should be operating at. If you guys need more involvement and more approvals from us, rather than here's the money, go figure it out, that part I don't understand. So I think my resolution, my language still stands, to approve $1.6 million. I can give you the exact number, but if you really feel like it, Director Chandler, I'm happy to amend that down to 1 million flat, because you're right, we probably can't spend 1.6 on this. So I'll change my resolution down to $1 million for the board to authorize $1 million for high volume event service to be operated in 2026, according to the high volume events resolution passed in 2025. Spend it however you think is best to provide high volume event service for our customers.
Director Ruscia.
Thank you. I actually think Secretary Nicholson is being quite reasonable. I know what it's like to have your heart wrapped around a project. You think it's going to happen, and then it doesn't, and that includes like here at RTD. If I understand what Secretary Nicholson is saying is, hey, if you can, please try to do at least one, high volume event, some extra service, even if it's just, extending the time that a route runs after an event. I think that's really reasonable, actually. And to Director Whitmore's point earlier about, like goodwill, and it is good marketing. I guess if this were at the regular board meeting and this were an amendment, I would probably vote in favor, just because it's giving staff a lot of flexibility. I just looked at the high volume event plan, and it does list things like Parade of Lights, New Year's Eve. I just think there's a lot of opportunity. I also liked what Jesse Carter said, maybe we can just run some service, a post game time so folks can get home. But anyway, it's not my committee. I just wanted to chip in, especially since I was so hard on my colleagues about pushing this in a time of a deficit. But I'm from my outside perspective, it looks like a reasonable compromise.
Director Nicholson, I'm wondering if you would take a friendly amendment.
From you always.
Well, I would just say to be implemented in 26 into early 2027 or some into 27, just to give that like
into March 31st, 2027, just because there's whatever, if that works.
Sure. I just think it gives them more time to sort of.
Yeah. Fine.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna take a vote. Director Bouquet.
No.
Okay. Director Busick.
No.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Yes. I just want to make clear, just so that I'm clear, the amount is $1 million and the time frame is between now and March 31st, 2027. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. To your yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Director Nicholson?
Yes.
Director Pagliari?
Yes.
Director Whitmore?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 yeses and 2 noes. This motion, the amendment passes. I'm not gonna get back down to reread this. Okay, sorry. And okay. All right. So, yeah, Jack, do I need to do anything else, or am I good there?
You're fine. I think the overarching issue on this one remains that we're now taking an item that was very specific to a certain thing and making it very general. So we'll have to work on the board report to indicate exactly what that is, and I'll have to get with DM and CEO Johnson to sort out what materials we include to support this.
Okay. All right. And then we're going to move on to our third action for the board of directors to adopt the Title VI service.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to clarify, did we just vote on the amendment or did we just vote on the whole motion?
That's yes. You know what? Thank you.
That's that. Okay, that was what I was trying to.
Sorry.
Yeah, we just passed the amendment.
Yeah. So now we're going to vote on the motion. I'll go back. Director Bouquet.
No.
All right, Director Busick. Did we lose you, Director Busick?
Time zone issues.
Okay, we know he was a no before. So Vice Chair Chandler.
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
Yes.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
I am still a yes, and so we're at 5 and 2 or 5 and 1 and an absent. The motion passes. Now we have September 2026 Title VI Service Equity Analysis for the Board of Directors to adopt the Title VI Service Equity Analysis Report for the September 2026 service change to comply with federal laws, regulations, and guidelines related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Sorry, I didn't catch you that.
Bouquet move.
And who's our second?
Second.
Chandler. So I hear Bouquet and Chandler. Now I would ask my friend Danny McLean, Transit Equity Specialist, Civil Rights Division, Kelly Irving, Director, Civil Rights Division, and Jesse Carter, Director, Service Planning and Scheduling, to present this item.
Good evening to the board and Chair Harwick. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Danny McLean. I am serving in RTD Civil Rights Division as Acting Transit Equity Manager. And tonight I'm here to present RTD's Title VI Service Equity Analysis for the September Run Board. As you all know, we are a federally funded transit agency, so we have to comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, ensuring that our service changes do not create inequitable impacts for our communities. That's what today's slideshow is about. So quickly, what tonight's presentation will cover, first we'll start with RTD's Title VI policies that govern our service equity analyses. I'll then provide a high-level overview of the methodology that we use to do so, followed by the results at both the route and line level, as well as the system level of the September equity analysis, and concluding with our conclusions and recommendations from the report. So to highlight the policies that govern this work, there are 3 of them. The first is the Major Service Change Policy, which I think y'all are largely familiar with our Disparate Impact or DI policy, and our Disproportionate Burden or DB policy. DI examines effects on BIPOC populations, that is Black, Indigenous, people of color populations, whereas disproportionate burdens, we're looking at low-income populations. So RTD's board adopted our new Title VI program in May of last year, and this outlines the framework that we use to evaluate our service equity analyses, to evaluate our service changes, and determine when an analysis is required in the first place. So an analysis is triggered when RTD implements what's called a major service change. So this is defined, as you can see here on the slide, as a 25% change, whether that's an increase or a decrease to service hours, route miles, service span, or frequency. And this applies to a change that's made at one time or cumulatively over a 3-year period or a 36-month period. It also includes implementation or elimination of a route or a line. So when we look at our service equity analysis for September, there were 12 proposed changes that met this threshold. So a variety of bus routes, including the 10, 20, 52, as well as the D and the C lines. So we apply a 10% threshold when we're evaluating potential DI and DB findings. What this essentially means is that when we make service increases, equity populations, that is BIPOC and low-income populations, can receive no less than 10% of the benefit received by their counterparts. Now, for service decreases, this means that equity populations, they can experience no more than 10% of the burden of the impact experienced by non-equity populations. So importantly, we handle DI and DB findings a little bit differently. So DI findings can proceed only if there is a substantial legitimate justification and no less impactful alternatives would meet the same legitimate program goals. But for DB findings, RTD evaluates mitigation when it is practicable. So diving quickly into the methodology. First, we start with a route level analysis. So this is where we're comparing demographic characteristics within a 1/4 mile buffer of each affected route to identify those localized impacts. After we do the route and line level analysis for the service changes, we then look at the system level. And so this evaluates all the major service changes collectively using those same block group demographics to identify broader network trends. So this dual approach really helps us, ensure that RTD is looking at both the localized and the system-wide equity findings. Alrighty, let's dive into a quick example to see how this works. So I chose the D line for this example. So when we do our DI/DB calculations for the D line, we actually found that BIPOC populations stand to be less impacted by that discontinuation than non-BIPOC populations. So the result is there's no DI. Whereas we see that low-income populations stand to be slightly more impacted than non-low-income populations. And that difference did exceed the threshold, meaning that there was a DB. And so this approach is systematized. It's applied across all of the route and line level analyses. Importantly, we don't just look at DI and DB findings in our service equity analyses. So we also do 2 other activities. So we look at key activity centers and we incorporate in onboard survey data from the 2024 onboard survey. So the key activity centers assessment, again, is using that 1/4 mile buffer. And we're looking at jobs in that buffer zone, as well as senior housing, social services, schools, and retail centers. And this data is from Esri, DRCOG, and the US Census. So with the D line, again, is our example, we found that there's 104K about jobs within that 1/4 mile buffer of the D line, a pretty substantial amount of jobs, and almost 170 total key activity centers, including 1 senior housing, as well as more than 20 academic institutions. So that's part of our key activity center analysis. And then our onboard survey. So the onboard survey doesn't add to the DI/DB calculation, but it does help us contextualize the demographic findings of that calculation. So for instance, here on the D line, we actually see that BIPOC populations and low-income populations ride the D line, at least when this survey was administered, a little bit less than we would expect from the demographic data of the surrounding area. And then finally, we do hone in a little bit more onto that job proximity part of the key activity center assessment. So specifically, we look at low to medium wage jobs, jobs held by workers of color, and jobs held by Hispanic and Latina workers. Okay, so into the results we go, starting with the route and line level increases. So we actually calculated 8 DIs and 3 potential DBs with this run board. So it's very important to note, though, that many of these were identified in connection to route restructurings. So for instance, we have the route 20 and 23, where a route is going away and then another route is being instated and effectively making up for a huge chunk of that initial route, right? So we have to really look at this with a grain of salt and with some nuance in seeing these numbers and taking everything in context of the entire service change proposal. When we look at decreases, we had no DIs, but we did have 2 DBs. That was for the 20 as well as the D line. Moving on to our system level increases. So with all of these changes accrued together, so we actually do see that non-BIPOC populations do stand to benefit slightly more compared to BIPOC populations. It's a very small difference, but it did meet our threshold and resulted in a potential DI. Whereas on the flip side, we saw that low-income populations stand to benefit more at the system level compared to non-low-income populations, which meant that there was no potential DB. Now, with decreases, we saw that non-BIPOC stand to be impacted more compared to BIPOC, so there's no DI. And with low-income populations, they actually do stand to be impacted slightly more compared to non-low income, but it doesn't meet the threshold. Therefore, there was no potential DB. So before I go into our conclusions and our recommendations, just wanted to highlight, we do have a fairly robust public engagement strategy around our service changes. So that includes publishing in press releases and RTD's Read and Ride, as well as other outlets. But I would specifically highlight the public meetings and the Ask a Service Planner meetings that we host. So those happened in mid-June between the 22nd and the 24th. And other data on our outreach regarding service changes can be requested via communications. Okay, so what does this all mean for y'all, the board? So again, I want to highlight most of the identified findings are with those route restructurings, which Mr. Carter can go into in a bit detail if you would like. So really the equity concerns at the route and line level are pretty minimal. Most of them are also associated with service increases. So what we're saying there is that BIPOC people still benefit, right? Low-income individuals still benefit, but it may not be quite as much as their counterparts. The only one that we would flag is the Route 53. So this is the only proposal where there were both route level DI and DB findings paired with other considerations such as accessibility considerations. Okay, so big picture, we do see that system-wide potential DI. So benefits accrue slightly more to non-BIPOC populations. We don't see a system-wide DB. For decreases, we don't see a DI or a DB. I would again highlight the differences between our comparator groups remain small at the system level. So equity considerations, at least as far as the Title VI analysis is concerned, are fairly minimal. And RTD has identified substantial legitimate justifications for many of the proposed service changes. So that includes maintaining customer access during, Downtown Rail project and the Colfax BRT, as well as supporting other major capital and infrastructure projects. So concluding with our recommendation, as you know, the FTA requires you all to consider the results of the equity analysis prior to taking action. So we identified some findings, and specifically that system level DI. But at this point, I would request that you approve this September service equity analysis. And I thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Do we have any questions from our committee or any other board members that are here? Vice Chair Chandler.
Thank you, Director Harwick, or Chair Harwick. First of all, thank you so much, Ms. McLean. You did a great job. I really appreciated the way you presented it. The information was very succinct. I understand a little bit more every time I hear the equity analysis presentations. I always learn something more, so I appreciate it. And I also appreciate, the findings that came through. So thank you very much for the presentation. It was very good.
Director Nicholson and then Director Arcuri.
I just wanted to second everything that Director Chandler said. I really enjoy learning about the stuff that goes into this, and it's complicated and engaging. So appreciate it very much.
Director Arcuri.
I also give you a big thank you. This is a very complicated topic, and I am, I want to say the word relieved, but that doesn't sound right, but that's just the word that's coming to mind. Relieved that all of this is in good hands, very competent hands of people who understand what they are doing when they do this analysis. That's very clear by the way you made your presentation. I have a lot of confidence in what you've presented. So thank you so much. And I hope as time goes by, the more I learn about this, the more it will, sink in for me. I do have one question that I think I've asked before, but I know it wasn't directly of you. And that is, for those of us who live in the suburbs, okay, we either take a bus to get to a light rail station, or I would say probably more commonly, we drive and park, okay? And driving and parking is what I have done literally for decades. And yet your analysis only includes a 1/4 mile border around the routes. And yet, for instance, now, you know, the D line is gone and the C line has taken its place. That does affect the way I commute. But yet I'm a few miles away from the light rail station. So do you know why we have just the quarter mile buffer? And would it make more sense to extend the analysis in areas where we are in the suburbs or in the mountains?
Chair, if I may.
Please.
Sure. So the quarter mile is pretty rooted in FTA standards as well as the circular standards, and it's embodied within the RTD's Title VI program. So I will say that we do other equity analyses where we do use different catchment areas. So for instance, when we do our service performance monitoring report, we look at a half mile from rail, if I'm not mistaken, and for commuter rail, that actually increases to 3 miles. So there have been instances in our different reporting mechanisms where we do use an expanded, you know, buffer, an expanded catchment area. This one in particular, though, we do stick to that quarter mile. If that's something that we wanted to change, we would need to do so within the policy itself at the time of the next Title VI program update.
Is that something the RTD board would do, or is that a federal guideline regulation that we would have no purview over?
If I may, Chair?
Please.
Sure. So RTD's next Title VI program will govern from 2028 to 2031. That's something that my team leads, but it's certainly in collaboration with other agency staff, and it's something that the board provides input on and has to approve, right? So that is it comes from our agency in shorter terms.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, I see no more questions. Do we have any no votes? All right, with 7 yes votes, this motion passes. We still have one more final action and 2 discussion items, and there's a possibility we have to figure something else out. But right now I'm going to give us a break. I'm going to reconvene us in the interest of time in 10 minutes at 7:37. That's for our cart break, just FYI, sorry.
Cindy, your camera's on, just let you know.
Thank you. I thought I clicked both of those off. I guess it didn't actually happen. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, if you're on the call, we're delayed just about a minute or two. We just got a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. All right, everybody, are we got ourselves a full house yet? Okay. Before we move on to our fourth and final action, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping around high volume events. And so I need to take a vote to reconsider that and make an amendment to it. So I need to take a vote. Is everybody ready to go? Director Nicholson.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you needed a formal move to reconsider, but yeah, let's do
You
that.
do.
Okay, I
All
move
right.
to reconsider.
Thank you. All right, Director Bouquet. Oh, sorry, Director Busick.
Yeah, the motion to reconsider, is it done by a member of the prevailing team or the losing team? I think there's a rule about that.
It is, yeah. I can-
Yep, Jack, go for it.
Sorry, everyone. This is a mea culpa. In having some conversations during the break, it became clear that the motion that was made to amend the item was just so drastically different than the underlying principle of the motion, which is, if you can see in your packets on page 57, the recommended action is to adjust the action that the board took in June. And what would be more appropriate, and in discussing this with Director Nicholson and Chair Harwick and GM and CEO Johnson during the break, would be for the board to reinstate the recommended action as it appears in the packet. And instead of striking and replacing with Director Nicholson's amendment, have his amendment be additive to that recommended action, such that the recommended action would read, for the board of directors to amend the recommended action related to the high volume event service pilot for the 2026-27 Denver Broncos season approved on June 23rd, 2026, and to direct staff to continue collaborative planning with the Denver Broncos organization and regional partners for the implementation of the pilot for the 27-28 Denver Broncos season, and then add below that Director Nicholson's language, which is to the effect of, for the board to authorize $1 million to provide high volume event service between now and March 2027. This preserves the original intent of the motion while also honoring the board's desire to move forward with additional high volume event service in between now and March of 2027. So that's the framing for this. Director Nicholson, as I understand, is on board. He obviously made the motion to reconsider, as is Chair Harwick. And if we can procedurally knock this out really quickly, we can be back on our way.
Vice Chair Chandler.
I second that motion.
Okay. All right, we'll take the vote. Director Bouquet.
No.
Okay. Director Busick.
No.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
Yes.
Director Pagliari.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Okay, now we will move on to
So now that the motion has been reconsidered, so the item's reconsidered, now we need Director Nicholson to make his motion again to add it as an amendment. We'll vote on that and vote on everything one more time.
Okay.
I move to amend the item in the manner as stated by Executive Manager Kroll.
I second that.
Moments ago.
Okay. Bouquet.
No.
Busick.
No.
Chandler.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Pagliari.
Yes.
Whitmore.
Yes.
I'm also a yes, 5-2. And now we'll take a last vote on the full motion. Bouquet.
No.
Busick.
Nope.
Chandler.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Pagliari.
Yes.
Whitmore.
Yes.
Harwick. 5-2. Now we will move on to our fourth and final recommended action. Also, thank you everybody for getting us through that. Appreciate it. And fourth, okay, for the board of directors to approve the September 2026 service change as revised and summarized in Amendment A, and to authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee to execute contract amendments as necessary for private operators impacted by service changes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll move. Second. Bouquet.
Okay, Chandler and Bouquet. Now I would like Jesse Carter, Director, Service Planning and Scheduling, to present this item.
Thank you, Committee Chair. As part of the September 2026 service change, staff would like to bring before the board recommendations for customary changes associated with seasonal changes and transit service enhancements designed to strengthen reliability and to improve access to major destinations across the system. The September 2026 service change recommendation include the following rail and bus service recommendations. These are the most notable ones. One is the implementation of the Route AL service between DEN, Denver International Airport, and Longmont. The operation of bus lanes and stops along East Colfax between Broadway and Colorado related to the construction of Colfax BRT. The extension of the Route 53, North Sheridan Broomfield to Orchard Parkway at 144th Avenue near St. Anthony's Hospital. The extension of Route 83L, Cherry Creek Parker Road Limited Service to the DUS or Denver Union Station. And regrettably, the discontinuance of the Wagon Road Flex Ride. So as mentioned earlier by Danny, we have gone through the public hearing process. We had 4 meetings. 2 of them were Ask a Service Planner. The other 2 were also Zoom meetings that were more open to the public and giving out information. And we actually received quite a bit of information coming from stakeholders and the public in general asking for changes to the initial recommendation. So there are a number of revisions to the preliminary recommendation. They include the Route 0 and 0B, which are a request for minor trip time adjustments to better organize that service with the 0L. The Route 120 and 120L to adjust leave times at Eastlake and 124th Station to better coordinate with the N line. The R line to shift trips by just a minute to align better with the T line, and then the T line service to be extended to Alameda Station. There is one notable change I haven't mentioned just yet, and that is the Route 228 Louisville Broomfield. Staff is recommending at this time that that cancellation of that service be rescinded. So in the interest of time and hearing comments and taking questions from the committee, I would like to open for questions.
Director Rusha.
Well, thanks. Secretary Nicholson had his hand up first. He's on the committee. I can speak.
I'll defer.
You were
Okay.
you were half second on my thing, and I.
All right, just trying to follow the rules. Okay, thank you. So I came to OSS for this actually. I am concerned about the changes to Route 20. Gosh, if only like working folks on the east side of town had the lobbying power of Broomfield, but we don't. Like the 20 is one of the few true west side bus connections. I can understand that, you know, we might split it into 2 routes. My concern is that where we ended at DUS, right? Like it's not ending at DUS. It's not the terminus. It's not even stopping by DUS. And respectfully, like I might be like paraphrasing staff, but what I got the sense this is sort of like an experiment, and because you know it's like it's gonna go to the aquarium. With all due respect to the aquarium, nobody goes to the aquarium, and I'm just really concerned that you know we're making a major change on this route outside of the COA and the SOP, and I would love the opportunity to talk to staff, you know, after this meeting and this week to see if there isn't a way we can, you know, maybe do half of what's being proposed. Because, you know, for folks who need that DUS connection, we are now asking them to, you know, walk where they didn't have to walk or do a transfer. This route is not a high frequency route. So I feel like for a lot of riders, we're just making it more inconvenient. And again, just like recognizing we're doing the COA shortly, I think that's a conversation for next spring. So anyway, I just wanted to, you know, put in my plug that, you know, we not experiment too much with the 20/23. And if we do, maybe we split the route, but we don't change the terminus for the east side. Thank you.
Mr. Carter?
Committee Chair, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, I would have to, and I appreciate the concern on the Route 20, but I do want to mention that there's a bit of overlap between the old Route 20 and the 23, I believe, that we're going with as far as the renaming. So I would like to speak a bit more with Director Ruscia to explain the whys as it relates to not the COA or the SOP, but as it relates to the East Colfax BRT process. I don't necessarily want to take everyone's time tonight to go through it, but I would like to provide further information on that.
Okay. Director Nicholson.
So I just wanted to say thank you. This is my favorite service change that we've had so far. It makes a bunch of changes to downtown that are going to be both disruptive and awesome. And I think that, it speaks to the fact that this agency, it is almost in some ways at its best when it's adapting to the future. There are a lot of things that, anytime you're making big changes like that, you're gonna frustrate some people, you're gonna change some people's routines. But wow, reading over those comments on the C line, on the 83, on so many of these routes, people are like, thank you for making these changes. Thank you for rerouting these buses. Thank you for coming up with a new way of doing things. It makes my life better. And it was really moving, quite honestly, to see that in action. And I just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Director Ruscia's point, the Louisville 228, I don't live anywhere near there, and they do have a lot of lobbying power, and the citizens actually did speak really loudly and clearly about the 228. So I appreciate that being taken off the service cut list for this particular time frame. I think many of the people that testified earlier and the barrage of public comments that were received via email, I think this was not only wise, but I think it's prudent as well. So thank you very much for listening to that and listening to those that live up in the north. But I also, to Director Ruscia's point, east-west is there needs to be some help. I mean, we do a lot of things north-south. East-west does not get the love that it needs, and I'm way out here in the east, so I'm just putting in a plug for potential opportunities in the future. So thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
Okay, Director Chandler, don't blame us, blame the roadways and placement of reservoirs. It's one of the things that actually challenges our team is east-west is pretty difficult based on the way the roadway network is laid out, but I certainly appreciate your comment there.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Do I have any? I'm going to now move on to the vote. Do we have any no votes? Nope, no votes, 7 yeses, and this motion passes. Moving on, we have 2 discussion items for tonight's agenda. Our first item is the micro transit contract, and I would like to ask GMCO Johnson and Julie Kirk, Director Contracted Services and Business Operations, to present this item to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Julie Kirk to the committee. She is our Director of Contracted Services. As you may recall, in relationship to the operationals realignment, we were trying to capitalize on efficiency. She currently has auspices of contracted services, both on steel wheel and rubber tire. The premise behind this microtransit contract is to leverage efficiencies as we look at service efficiencies relative to how we deliver on first and last mile options. And it is something we're exploring, recognizing where we are from a fiscal standpoint. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will yield the floor to Ms. Kirk. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, GMCO Johnson. I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here tonight. So it's nice to see all of you. So I'm here to talk about microtransit. Again, I'm Julie Kirk, Director of Contracted Services and Business Operations. So as all of you know, RTD serves a large service area where mobility needs vary significantly by geography and our travel demand. While fixed route bus and rail services remain the backbone of our regional network, these traditional modes are not always the most efficient solution in low density areas with dispersed origins and destinations. So as the agency continues working to improve mobility across its service areas, microtransit has emerged as a key service delivery tool, capable of providing flexible demand response service in areas where fixed route transit may not be warranted or even cost effective. The approach can improve access and allow the agency, I think, to deploy resources more strategically and effectively. So currently, FlexRide system includes 22 zones. However, the system's performance has consistently not met expectations. So with high costs for boarding and limited productivity in many of our areas and our zones. To address these limitations, RTD is evaluating kind of opportunity zones across the service area where higher quality microtransit supported by stronger technology, improved service design, and performance-driven operations could better meet demand at a lower cost. So at this point, we're evaluating the development of a district-wide microtransit contract to support the planning, deployment, operation, and expansion of flexible on-demand mobility services. The contract would establish a dedicated procurement to advance the agency's district-wide microtransit strategy, provide a consistent framework for service delivery, improve coordination across existing and future microtransit programs, and then avoid kind of duplicative procurement efforts and support the efficient expansion of microtransit services across our service area. So under this anticipated structure, the selected contractor would collaborate closely with RTD staff to identify and kind of redefine the microtransit opportunity zones across our service area, develop service plans integrated with existing bus, transit, or paratransit and rail services, and implement and operate microtransit services using kind of performance-based standards, monitor utilization, cost, customer experience, and operational effectiveness, and report outcomes and recommend service adjustments to optimize our performance. So the first planned opportunity zone will be kind of in our southern portion of the agency service area. We're looking at deployment in Q2 of 2027. Anticipate issuing a request for proposal with a contract recommendation plan for the board consideration in Q4 of this year. The contract is really intended to be supported through the reallocation of existing FlexRide operating funds, which would be consolidated into a district-wide microtransit service model. So potential efficiencies and cost adjustments may be achieved through this redesign and optimization of the FlexRide and select fixed route services as part of the implementation planning process. So the final contract value and implementation phasing and net financial impact will be established following receipt and evaluation of the proposals and selection of the successful contractor. And at that point, the contract will be presented to the board for approval prior to the award, which we're looking again at Q4 of 2026. And that's all that I have at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Director Nicholson, or sorry, Secretary Nicholson, I've neglected your title tonight. I'm sorry.
On this call, I'm just director. When it's the executive committee, you can call me that. So this is both incredibly exciting and I have meaningful questions. I have wanted this for so many years because it would be a massive improvement in so many places that I have, as a full-time rider, gotten 90% of where I want to go. And then it's like, oh, but that last little bit is out of reach, and FlexRide either isn't there or doesn't work very well. So really excited about it for that reason. I'm concerned about two things. One is like, I get that, there are a lot of pieces of this that, it is better to have handled by a contractor. I do wonder, in terms of things like the scheduling and that kind of thing, one of the big drawbacks I've seen from other places that do this and from our partners is that you have to get a separate app. you have to, there's no direct, easy, obvious link between the app that people know how to use to do their, their RTD fixed route stuff, and how do I get that last mile? So for me, it's going to be really important to see that whether it's built into the app ourselves or that there's some kind of deep linking, so that for customers it's seamless. I don't want them to have to set up another account. They have a MyRide account. They have a, there shouldn't be a need for that. They should be able to, ideally they should be able to pay for it through their MyRide account, though I know that gets very, very complicated with different things. Maybe you have to set up your credit card. The second thing is, I worry that, there's an adverse selection element to these types of services, where what we don't want is, to some degree, what we've seen from Access on Demand, which is that the purpose of it has grown well beyond what we expected it to be used for at the time and the amount that we expected it to be used for. This is to my mind, these are great services to be used, again, to get you from the end of your bus route or rail route to the house or whatever out in the middle of nowhere that you're trying to get to. They're not, or shouldn't be, oh, I'm going to take it to the grocery store, then I'm going to take it to the thing, then I'm going to take it to the thing, and it becomes your full-time transit. And so how we bake into that contract that, like, for example, the person has to have an active 3-hour pass, or they have to have tagged into a bus or a train or a whatever, that way we can meaningfully tie the microtransit usage to the actual fixed route service usage, or saying that, the trips can only begin and end at stations or stops, for example. You can't go from your house to the grocery store and back. I really want to see these services be cheap. I want to see them be awesome. And the only way you can do that and not have it completely destroy our budget is if it's limited and focused on serving our customers during their transit journeys. So I'd be curious if you, Julie, Ms. Kirk, sorry, or if GMCO Johnson have any thoughts on how the contract is going to be built out so as to provide that kind of integration and to limit the types of trips that this will be applied to.
So thank you so much, Secretary Nicholson. I'll start and I'll ask Ms. Kirk to supplement. As this body may be aware, we have been working in earnest to consolidate our app to make the customer experience a lot more seamless. And so with that as a backdrop, quite naturally, we don't want to step back in time. The work that the team is now doing to assess the feasibility, and quite naturally, we're bringing this to the board, to the committee at this time to socialize this, to garner feedback just as you provided. And so with that, we will take your comments, into consideration quite naturally, because we do want to ensure that we're not providing a product that we can't keep up with in light of the lessons learned previously. And then more to the point, we do want this to be a connection and supplement services whereby we have a 2,004, whatever, it's a big service area, 2,349 square miles. And we know that we can't be the end all be all with rubber tire. And so not only first or last mile, this can be the connectivity to provide access to the transit network. So all of that is under consideration as we look to create a scope. So Ms. Kirk, please feel free to add more information, because I know you and our colleagues have been working diligently as we determine what might be most judicious as we go forward.
Thank you, Deborah. And may I, Chair?
Please.
Yes. So, yes, basically Deborah stated it. We're in the process of doing the scope of work now. So I've taken some notes, and I will take everything that you said, and we will keep that into consideration and agree with your comments 100%. So, and we want this to be successful. We want this to be cost effective, and agree with the whole technology and communication point. I think that's a lot of the issues that we have with some of the services that we provide, and we need to improve on that. So appreciate all of your comments.
Great. Director Arcuri?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Harwick. Ms. Kirk, first of all, I'm, fairly new to all of this. Could you just give me some basic hypothetical examples? I know you haven't done your scope of work yet, but what exactly is it that you were envisioning here? Are people going to call up just a car for a single person to get a ride? Will there be a?
Well, we have not, okay, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, just,
Well, there's-
I need to know what will actually happen with this, because I'm just not too familiar with exactly what we mean by micro transit. That's part of my issue. And then secondly, just a few points on how you think this will change our partnership program that we already have. Thank you.
Again, Chairman.
Please.
Okay, thank you. So to first address kind of the services, it's really looking at, and this is why we're going to kind of pilot in the Denver South area, because we'll be looking at probably Uber, Lyft, maybe some van pools. It depends what contract that we get. And how that service works. And then we'll have the details outlined within that contract. I haven't worked through all of those yet with my team and what that looks like. And then as far as the partnership program, some of the things that we are looking at is then maybe we'll be able to transition some of those into part of this program. We're seeing some redundancies that we're providing services. So we'll be talking with my employee, which is Corey Schmidt, and we'll be working with him on how we want to look at that in the future and how that does affect our partnership program. But we're planning on continuing our partnership program at this time. There's no time, and at this time, there's no decision that we would end that program.
Thank you.
Jim CEO Johnson.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add a little context to the question posed. What is microtransit? So microtransit was a concept introduced maybe I'd say about 15 years ago. Instead of traditional transit services whereby one would use a 40-foot rubber tire bus or a rail car for greater efficiencies, recognizing cost per revenue hour and boardings, utilizing smaller type vehicles to provide more or less on-demand services. And so when we talk about microtransit as a whole, our Flex Ride service can be constituted as microtransit service, to the point that Ms. Kirk raised, looking at it from a holistic viewpoint, whereby in a perfect world, we could leverage all of our different micro services under our umbrella. There's been constant conversation relative to our paratransit services model and things of the like. This could be an overarching microtransit services contract by virtue of deploying different types of service to meet other customer segment needs in varying demographics. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Ms. Kirk, I just want to tell you, I'm wildly excited about this. I live in Arvada, and while we're not talking about Arvada today, I very regularly hear about providing transit service to the west side of town, and the way that Arvada is situated, it just doesn't work. So I love that there's a potential for this to come here. And while Chris is really looking at it as a first last mile off of our transit stops, to me, I'm thinking like 5 or 10 years down the road when we can really take this to the next level and be able to provide that service all throughout the district. So again, I know I'm way cart in front of the horse, but I'm really excited about this. And I think it dovetails really well with partnership program and the existing microtransit that already exists. So thank you for taking this on, and really pumped about it.
Great. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of questions. When would you like the additional comments from the board that would kind of maybe direct a little bit more on the contracting side? What would be your due date on that, so that we can help facilitate some ideas? Because I think to Director Nicholson's point, he brought up some very valid ideas, and I think if we thought about it, even deeper, I think maybe we could come up with a couple of additional thoughts that might give additional direction. So what is your time frame? And then the second question I had is, I really appreciate the idea of this being a microtransit, but I also want to make sure that we realize that the local community, the local city, even the local, people there know best what services are needed. So obviously stakeholder engagement is going to be paramount on something like this. So I just wanted to make sure that that was being, obviously, even more diligent, because when you're talking about these kinds of services, that they, know what's best. So.
GM CEO Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, all I was going to add, and I'll yield the floor to Ms. Kirk, we will disseminate a communique as I generally do out of my office, and we'll provide guidelines or deadlines and the format in which we'll take those comments. So that's what I wanted to add. And quite naturally, we are going to do some socialization of this concept, quite naturally working with our, oh my God, I was just distracted, working with our, service councils, I'm sorry, because there was a question asked about the partnership program and things alike, but Ms. Kirk could probably add a little more context. Thanks.
No, it's obviously, I appreciate that, Deborah, because it is something, if we're going to come back to the board at the fourth quarter, it's something that we need to be getting comments back pretty quickly. So I like that we'll give you a timeline, and we can, and I'm always available if you would like to meet in person or have some conversations also. My email is out there, julie.kirk@rtd-denver.com. So I'm welcome if you want to work through Jack and to work up any communications or any type of a meeting. I'm willing to sit down and talk to you. So that's all I have, unless you've got any further questions.
We got one last one, and Chris.
Okay.
Let's keep it quick.
I didn't see your hand up there.
It's not, oh yeah, because I've got the background in my grandma's office. I just wanted to say, this is one of those things, we're thinking about 2028. This is one of those things that the suburban voters who are going to decide whether or not we get to raise taxes are going to care about this a lot. It's going to be one of the things where they're like, wow, this is awesome. And so, I would just impress on everybody on the call, for this one, the branding, the marketing has to be absolutely awesome. I mean, to use the Gen Z speak of Director Palieri, the vibes have to be immaculate. And if we can pull that off, I think that it can have a really positive impact on the agency. I mean, you think about like the Lone Tree Link and the Douglas County and how glowingly they speak about that service down there and how much suburban voters like it. I want that glory for RTD. So thank you for the work you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Kirk. We really appreciate your time. Now we will move on to, oh, hi, sweetheart. We will now move on to our second and final item, fair enforcement policies and opportunities. As I understand it, Secretary Nicholson will briefly introduce this item, then ask Deputy Chief of Police Sean Ferris to share some statistics related to fair enforcement. Following the presentation of the data, Secretary Nicholson will provide some additional context, and then I will open the floor to further discussion by the committee and assembled directors. Are there any oh, sorry, go ahead. Director Nicholson, you're up, my friend.
Thank you very much. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to bring this forward today. It's the result of, at least a year of conversations that have taken place with Chief Martingano and his team, and Director Palieri and Director Chandler, and so many folks in this agency who want to see a meaningful opportunity to decrease fare evasion, increase fair payment, and create a more welcoming transit environment. So I'll pass it over to, I see Chief Martingano has joined the call. I think maybe the Deputy Chief's the one who's presenting, but I'll pass it over to him and let him go from there. Sean, there we go. Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Again, I'm Sean Ferris, Deputy Chief of Police for RTD's Transit Police Department. I'm going to do my screen share here. I got a presentation really talking about our fair enforcement matrix. And can everybody see that on the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet? Oh, might be having a slight issue with this.
There we go.
Guys got it now? Okay, perfect.
If you can just enter presentation mode, but perfect. You're good now.
Yep.
You guys got it? Okay, perfect. Again, our fair enforcement matrix, really, if we look at our fair warnings and citations issued for 2025 and 2026, If we look for the whole of 2025, we issued 12,789 warnings and a total of 1,096 citations. Through June of this year, our midway point, we exceeded what we did last year midway through with 6,741 warnings and a total right now of 744 citations, as that graph illustrates. And I do apologize. It looks like a computer might have froze up here. There we go. If we go to where we talk about rail proof of payment, what our officers and our security team do is we have handheld scanners. They use those devices where they can scan mobile passes and verify that individuals actually have valid fare. They also check our printed fare tickets. And then again, between our security team and PD, looking at the graph as far as proof of payment for rail checks in 2025, we totaled nearly 5 million checks. We have our data through May of this year, and we've done over 2 million, about 2 million and nearly 200,000 so far through May. And then if we look at our violator rate, this is the last metric we're going to discuss. Really, our violator rate, if we look at May to May, so May of 2025 to May of 2026, 2025 we're at about 6.5%, 6.05, and then you see a pretty steady decline all the way down to May of this year where it's 3.90%. We did have a few months where it kind of levied up a little bit on occasion, as that graph illustrates. But for the most part, I think out of 13 months for both Mays and the remainder of that, we had 9 months with declines and then 4 months total, where we had a couple of issues where they rose, but nothing dramatically with that. That's really a brief presentation on those matrix that we have, and then I'll open it up for any questions that anybody may have.
Okay, do we have any questions, or Director Nicholson, do you have any more context to add?
I do, but I'll let Director Chandler go first with questions.
Okay, Vice Chair Chandler, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Harwick. How you indicated there was a dramatic increase in the number of scanners that are available for the police. Does that mean that nearly all police that are on actual RTD products, a bus or train, have a scanner so that they are doing that enforcement? Or what is the percentage of those that do or don't have a scanner?
Great question. Well, what we did create this year is we created a dedicated fare enforcement team of police officers, transit police officers. We currently have 2 teams of 3 officers that work that. They also work in conjunction with our impact team to do joint operations. And then certainly some of our overlap days, we have some of the additional officers on board to assist those teams with operations. So to give you an accurate number, the fare enforcement team, that's a tool that they use between those 6 officers pretty much every day they go out to work. Our impact team also assists that and some of the other officers during the joint operations when we assist the fare enforcement team. But it's not a tool that most of the officers are using every day, but certainly the fare enforcement teams are. Who is using that tool pretty much every day of the work is some of the dedicated transit security team, specific on like the A line coming down, which is our most heavy ridership when it comes to the line. And some of the others, they got dedicated security personnel for there, and those are the ones that are carrying those certainly every day in addition to our police officer fare enforcement team.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Ferris and Chief Martingano. So this item really came out of trying to understand what policy changes the board could make to better facilitate the incredible work that our PD and our security teams have been doing to improve fare enforcement. You know, we, myself and Director Pagliari, for the last year or so have been, considering the welcoming transit environment as part of the task force that we were working on. And the idea that, came out really was not every transit agency has the type of warnings first policy system that we do. In fact, a number of agencies around the country have moved away from that and toward simply issuing a ticket every single time someone is committing a violation. San Diego, as an example of this, Philadelphia, in the board packet, it goes through many of the other agencies with similar open systems to ours that have basically decided, maybe people didn't know what public transit, an open system was 20 years ago. They didn't know they had to pay when they got on the train. Today they know. Everyone and their mother, whether you're coming to Denver, whether you're living here, you know you have to pay when you get on an RTD train. So just like we expect you you expect to get a ticket if you're speeding the first time, people should be willing to expect that they're going to get a ticket if they evade fares. And having heard from so many people on the board and just in the public over the last year about the importance of security and the importance of fare enforcement. I was on a radio show this morning at the invitation of Director Chandler, a friend of hers, and they were effusive about our police department and the work that we've been doing on security. It's made sense to me and to the other folks I spoke to that we should follow in the footsteps of other agencies that have tightened up these policies and say that, you know what, if you decide to board and you don't pay, then you can pay a fine. Now, part of this packet, it was unclear to me when working on this whether or not the agency right now has the ability to write its own tickets if we wanted to. And I know that there's been some work by staff to sort of figure that part of it out. The goal of this discussion is to move in the direction of changing our side of the policy to say, we will issue a ticket every single time. Ideally, to go along with that would be that we can personally write those tickets and we can scale up the size of the tickets over time. I think one of the reasons why we don't do it currently is that the only ticket that we write at the moment is $100 civil fine for a violation. That's kind of hard to hit somebody with for their first offense. And so the question is really, how can we get to a point where instead of doing nothing and then giving someone a big ticket, we can teach them that they really should not be violating the law and give them tickets that they pay to us, like many other transit agencies do. So I guess the point of this discussion item is to hear what you all think about making changes to our fare enforcement policies and trying to see if it's worthwhile to address the stats that Deputy Chief Ferris brought up and find a way to start actually doing more fare enforcement rather than just warnings. So anybody who wants to talk, please.
Director Ruscia.
Thanks. So I wanted to offer, so thank you, Secretary Nicholson, for this conversation and for staff's presentation. I just wanted to offer that when we went over the code of conduct 3 years ago, this came up actually. So we used to have a rule that said you got a warning, and we took away that warning and replaced it with officer discretion. So our code of conduct does say, like, you can have anything from a warning to a suspension. It's up to staff. And at the time, there was concern that we might not apply that discretion fairly. And I will admit, I actually think we do a pretty good job. I didn't trust staff 3 years in. I think staff is doing a good job. And also our contractors as well, more often than not, at least in my observation. So I would be concerned if we took that ability away from staff to use their professional discretion. because I'm also thinking about, especially with our contracted staff, like, what if that results in like some kind of escalation or causes a route to be slowed down, things like that. That's the feedback that we get from our operators before we expanded our TDPD, and we would have them do fare enforcement. So, but I also understand like the idea that not paying your fare is not fair. And I wonder if, we as a board can look at more ways to like invest in fare collection, like, investing more in like, tap on, tap off, allowing people to cure a violation on the spot, things like that. So that way we kind of have this like, this kind of like balance and giving staff some autonomy, and also just, making it as easy as possible to collect money from folks. But anyway, I just kind of want to offer that. I appreciate this conversation, and I also just felt like I kind of had a responsibility to say that, okay, 3 years on, I might have been a little rough, and I concede. I think our staff has done a pretty good job at exercising that discretion. But anyway, thank you for letting me speak, and thank you, Secretary Nicholson, for bringing this to the board.
Vice Chair Chandler.
Thank you, Chair Hardwick, and thank you, Director Ruscia, for those good comments. Excuse me. I too am thankful that we have really started upping the game on the fare enforcement. I think what it sends a message is we want you to care as a rider, and we want you to care as a staff member, right? So we have this colliding of, as a rider, when you don't pay, you tend to not value it. And so we want them to realize that this is a value proposition. They're getting something for the service that they're paying for. And it also helps others around them to take it seriously too. We'll probably, when people pay for something, they're more likely to treat it well. So I appreciate that. And I do appreciate the fact that there needs to be some discretion because, there needs to be an opportunity for someone to assess, well, maybe this person couldn't pay, maybe they're destitute, maybe they're homeless, whatever that needs to happen. So I do agree with that. But I also agree with the idea that there needs to be some way that we as a agency look into how we are collecting that fine or that payment. I also agree that $100 right off the bat is pretty steep. And so there needs to be some, my mother years ago, she got caught because she forgot to validate her bus pass, and she was on the light rail, and she managed to talk her way out of it. But this was back in 2016 or maybe 15, and the man was about ready to give her a ticket. And so, she just had forgotten to validate her transfer. And so there needs to be that kind of discretion as well. So I think this is great to have this ongoing discussion, but I also think this is overdue in terms of getting this kind of enforcement back up so that the public sees that we're taking what we're doing seriously, and also that those around you would feel more secure and safe along the route. So thank you.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just also say that, I think, well, first off, discretion is obviously something that, our officers and really all of our, staff should always have if they feel like something is unsafe, or if they feel like someone is, it's the right thing to do to not enforce fares or to wave somebody on. We give that authority to every bus driver. I think the question is, if you looked at the statistics we have for warnings versus citations and you applied them to speeding tickets, most people would look at you funny, because the expectation is 90% of the time when a cop pulls you over and you're going over the limit, you're going to get a speeding ticket. And so I think it's more about resetting that expectation with the public and with just the ridership in general, that we are going to write you a ticket 90% of the time, unless there's a really good reason, we are going to enforce our policy. And I think that, if we do that, if other systems have demonstrated that it works, that you can reduce the amount of fare evasion, you can increase people paying their fares because they don't want to get a $10 and then a $20 and then a $40 ticket and have to get, it's not worth the hassle. And so that's where, this idea comes in of, again, not trying to beat anybody over the head or really be, awful or anything like that, but just creating a continuum of enforcement rather than doing nothing and then doing a lot, basically.
So, Chris, Director Nicholson, I'm gonna just opine real quick. I totally like that graph, like the graph of warnings versus citations really stood out to me as well. And I think there's a lot to unpack here. I think there's a lot of lowering the fine. We go across municipalities right now. The ticket goes to those counties. Like that has to be an issue. I think about like time it takes for somebody to write a ticket, and then are they doing other fare enforcement? I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I wonder like where the best place is for us to do this, and like because there's so much to it. And I don't know, GMCO Johnson, I'm curious if this, like I know they didn't proceed with the fare study last night, but I wonder about like, as we look into that in the future, because obviously that's going to come back up, is this the place for that? That's just me just being curious. And Chris, I see your hand. I don't know if GMCO Johnson wants to answer, and then you can go.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Harwick. A couple things in reference to a fare study as it relates to last night's board action. We are, as staff, going to come back with some scenarios in September relative to 8 to 12 million saving, right?
Yes,
so I just wanted to ensure that I clarified that for the record as we move forward. And so we'll be working in conjunction with finance and planning leadership. There potentially could be a approach in which we take holistically as relates to where we are. Secretary Nicholson and I, while it wasn't expressed, while he's been working with our command staff of the police department, he and I have had conversations relative to this as well. And it's my understanding, pursuant to the discussions that we have had, that the intent here is to develop a plan to discern what might be most palatable as we go forward, recognizing that we have a diverse customer segment, and this is not going to be a cookie cutter approach that addresses all elements, but considering where we stand with a open fare payment system, trying to ensure that everyone is paying their fair share. I would look to the board to work as a collective to discern what might be optimal from a policy vantage point, and staff would be more than willing to lean in and support that effort as we go forward. One last comment before I yield the floor, if I may, is ensuring that we recognize what's before us in having conversations with Chief Martingano as we talk about any type of administrative fees. We do not have a mechanism set up for that, so we have to plan accordingly. So there's a lot of different steps that would need to be put in place and thought through from an administrative vantage point, because we do not want this to be a burden. Would we have some other types of programs for those that may not be able to pay the fare? Are we trying to be punitive? But actually understanding what the problem is that we're trying to solve for. So that's what I would ask of the board, to provide that type of direction in any type of policy that you all would effectuate. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. I got you. The last two. I got Director Nicholson, and then I've got Director Chandler.
So just as a framing, which I should have done at the beginning of this, the goal from this item is to bring a recommended action in September to ask staff to put together a plan, basically, for implementation for this type of a change, and then to bring that plan to us in December, January, basically, that says, okay, here's how, in an RTD context, we would move forward with implementing, these improvements to fare evasion. Here are the 15 things that need to happen. To GMCO Johnson's point, this is complicated. There are equity concerns involved. There are legal concerns involved. There are fare enforcement concerns. There's like a bunch of stuff, and we shouldn't take it lightly because it does affect people's lives. There are a lot of folks have we talked to. So I think the goal for me is there's a plan by December, and then we spend all of 2027 basically doing the implementation of that plan, such that January 2028, we can actually be doing this in practice and tell the public about it. Hey, new posture. Hey, we're doing some stuff differently. Hey, we're trying to meet you where you are. And I think that that'll be a lot of work, but I think, you know, just based on the conversations that I've had, I think it'll be worth the effort at the end of the day.
Okay, that sounds great. You probably should have started with that, but that was still good. Thank you for wrapping up with it. Director Chandler, I'm gonna have you finish this out, and then I'm gonna try to close this up in the next 5 or 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Harwick. I was just wondering, maybe to that point, to Director Nicholson's point, perhaps, and I don't want to put more committees out there or more work on us, but maybe there should be like a director 2-person committee that would work alongside and have those recommendations, because I think that would give the staff more direction, and it would allow us to come up with those ideas, and we can solicit that through the discussion board app thingy. So I think that would be a really good, you know, I don't necessarily want to be on that committee, but I could certainly try, especially if we did it later on in the year. But I think having a 2-person committee helping with that direction would facilitate this a little bit quicker, and also help give that needed direction to the staff. So just my 2 cents worth.
Chris, you're killing me, man.
I'm just going to say I think that's a phenomenal idea, and I would love to work with Jack and the chair and you, Mr. Chair, to set that up. I think it's an excellent idea.
Okay, cool. Okay. All right. So, as I mentioned before, this is Director Buzik's last night with us. Vince, do you want to go? I don't know if anybody else has other matters. And if there are other matters, will you at least raise your hand and let me know that you have another matter? And Chris, you still have your hand up, so I don't know if you have another matter or not. Okay. Does anybody have another matter? All right. Director Buzik, I'm going to give you the floor. Please take the time that you would like to say whatever you'd like to say to us. Read us the riot act, whatever you'd like. In French, English, whatever your preference.
It's too late for the riot act, but thanks. No, really, thanks everybody for all your hard work. Continue doing the hard work. Remember policy, operations. We live over here. Let's try to keep that in mind. And yeah, to keep doing a good job. And remember, it's not about self-aggrandizement. It's not about self-promotion. It's about taking care of our customers, you know, making sure they are have the best service possible. So it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. Some challenging times, some interesting times, as the Chinese would say, right? But very good overall. So thanks everybody, and au revoir.
Thanks, Vince. Okay. Vince, I just really have appreciated my time with you, and good luck on your next adventure. And again, I'm looking forward to visiting my wing in France. Okay. As a reminder, the board does not hold any meetings during the month of August, so our next Operations Safety and Security meeting will be scheduled for Wednesday, September 16th at 5:30 p.m. Seeing no other discussion, this meeting is adjourned at 8:39. Thank you all so much. Take care. Au revoir.